Welcome to the Soch podcast, where we explore Sikh and wider South Asian history, art and philosophy with historians, artists and researchers.
Today I've got the pleasure to talk to someone that many will have heard of before, Nidar Singh, well known for his role in spreading and teaching Sanatan Shastar Vidya and publishing a book alongside Kashi House in the Master's Presence Volume 1. Now, before we dig our teeth into Sanatan Shastar Vidya, like I do with all our guests, I always just like to get to know you a little bit more, your background, how you ended up doing what you're doing, and then also just saying thank you for taking the time to do this podcast.
Okay, so like I said, I'm grateful that you gave me an opportunity here to have a little talk about Sanatan Shastar Vidya. So, by myself, like most people, most of the listeners in the UK of my generation, I was born here in 1967, born in a wonderful town in Wolverhampton. And by the age of 5, I was back in India. So in India, I had my great-grandmother, my grandfather, grandmother, and my grand-aunt on one side of the family. And then my Masi had no children. So I was practically given to my Masi to rear up. So I grew up like half my life in India and half my life, early life, I would say, in the UK. So from the age of 5-ish to about around 10-ish, I was in India. And it felt like kidnapped. My mother then basically tricked me coming back to England. She felt that down there I was really spoiled. When you're reared up by grannies and grandmothers and great-grandmothers and so on, you don't tend to go to school and stuff like that. They just, there's no need and so on. You can just play around. That's what I did. I just played there. I was like a king in India and so on. And when I came back here, then go back to reality, hit school and so on. And then I was here until the age of 17. Then just around 1984, when that disastrous Operation Blue Star happened, just shortly after that, me and my father, my great-grandmother was getting elderly, and she wanted to see me before she died. And so we went to India to see her. Like, as soon as I went there, I realized I need to be back here again, stay there. So I stayed there. So my parents were not really happy because I was at the point of getting my secondary education here. So going to school, it's called secondary school, just finished. I should be going to college, should be studying, and then going on to university and so on. So in terms of education, I was always strong, but I felt I couldn't come back. There was, my childhood was there, and all the reminiscences there just made me want to stick and stay there. So I was around 17 years old when at a local festival in Moseb. Moseb is the place where Guru Arjan Dev got married. So it's the Nanaki of Guru Hargobind Ji. And Moseb is, I would say, about 7, 8, 9 about kilometers away from my village. My village is Shadipur. It's right next to Noormal. And by chance that day, there was an elderly Nihang there discussing stuff with some young men. So I was just wandering around. The Mela is very big. And in that Mela, local villages like ours and other villages, they sort of share responsibility for certain things. Some will provide langar, some will provide this seva, some provide this seva. And I was just a Balatia. And at that time I was a Munna as well. And I was just walking around the Mela. It's noisy and so on. And I saw this Nihang. And this Nihang is there discussing stuff. I couldn't hear what it was. So when I went close, it was towards the end of that conversation that I caught something about Shatra weapons and so on. And then that's how I met my Gurdev. He looked at me, saw me, and called me over, beckoned me over. And the words he said to me is, would you like to learn the Vidya of your ancestors? I didn't know what you're talking about. But then I realized, okay, it's 8 ancestors, Vidya, and and he said, come back tomorrow. And that's how I met my Gurdev. But like I said, I was born in here. My parents, like most of our Punjabi parents, in the 60s, they came here. My great-grandfather before that had been in the 1920s, he traveled to America. And then from America, he stayed there about 30 years in California. And then he came back to India and so on. And then in the 1960s, my grandfather, my father, and my taya, they all decided to come to UK. And in those days, because of World War II, Britain was really, I can say, they'd be bombed and all this, and they needed workers here and so on. So apparently in those days, you could just, you didn't even need a passport. You could just get on a plane, then they'll ship you off here and they put you in a factory and so on. And thus my parents came here in the 60s. My mother joined my father later on. And then I was born here in 67. Then I grew, like I said, first few years here. Then I went to India, stayed there. Next 5 years down there, then back to here, secondary education. Then I went back to India. And then I was studying my Gurdev for roughly about 10 to 11 years. And then I also, after I learned the Vidya, I also traveled for 2 years, as my Gurdev wanted me to do. And I traveled amidst the Nihang Dals, obviously, from Burdas or Tarna Dals. I went amongst the Dasis, Nirmales, Sevapanthis, and just generally traveled all over northern India, like picking whatever knowledge I could. And it's just acquiring knowledge and experience. And then I would eventually come, I'll tell you a bit later on what happened, like, but eventually I had to leave India. Then I came here in 1994, I think.
That's fascinating. So a couple of questions just off the back of that then. And one of the questions that got put forward was, what is the history of Sanatan Shastar Vidya and your Ustad and his lineage? So like, how does that work?
Okay, let's look at the Vidya itself. Like, so the art's actual name is Shastar Vidya, which literally translates as the science of weapons. Okay, so if you go into ancient texts and so on, you'll have reference like Pant Prakash will say like Shastar Vidya Jim Hoy Sambhalo. He's also spoken of as a Yudh Vidya as well. The history of Shastar Vidya, and I'll explain how Sanatan gets attached to it, is traced all the way back through oral tradition, and even written sources mention this. It is traced, like in many arts and sciences of India, is traced back to the Adi Deva, which is the primordial god, which is like the primordial, that's called the archetypal shaman Shiva. So mythologically, they trace it back to Shiva. And Shiva, we're talking about the Pachupats and so on. Shiv, Uchitera, Pachupat, Sunke Rangrate, Sablogrant. So from Shiva, the earliest devotees of Shiva were the Pachupat. And these Pachupat Babas and so on, they were Kesatari, just like Sikhs. So nowadays, when we in the Nihang Dals talk about Kes and Kesatari and so on, there's a hymn in the Rig Veda which talks about the Kes sin. In other words, people with the Kes, long hair and so on, and they're spoken as Munis. So even in Sablogrant, so Sablogrant is the secondary text of Guru Gobind Singh and is the main text of Shastar Vidya alongside Dasam Grant. In there you have references like Prutpurpyo Khalsa, like Khalsa was created, emerged. Prutpurpyo Khalsa, Munivarupan. So Munivarupan, the form of the Munis. So the Munis were the ancient sages of prehistoric India who kept long hair, etc. So on, just like we Sikhs do and so on. And even if you go to India now, you go amongst the Shiva sadhus, the devotees of Shiva, they also keep their hair uncut, like the Sikhs and so on. So the Vidya is traced back to Shiva. And then through Shiva, it comes down to the Pachupats. Pachupats later on transmute into a sect called the Kapalakas. Kapalakas will then come in time to become what's called Nathas, the Natha Babas. And Nathas were yogis and so on, like the most famous being Gorakhnath, etc. so on. And then from the Nathas, the oral tradition records that Guru Nanak, so Guru Nanak when he was young, as a young man and so on, the oral tradition states that the Nath Babas, on beholding Guru Nanak, so this is from a Sikh perspective, like it's when the Nath Babas beheld these Shastatari warrior Nath Babas, so the Nathas became armed and became warriors, especially with the invasion of the Muslims and so on. They began to take up arms to defend their core Sanatan faith and so on. But the ascetic warriors who are armed, like the Virta in the Vedas and so on, have been known from the beginnings of time, like in India and so on. So ascetics and the travel all over India and so on, they'll be armed with tridents, later on swords and clubs and so on. And as a consequence, these Natha Babas, in terms of Guru Nanak we're talking about, like, they at some point met Guru Nanak, the oral tradition goes, and they looked upon Guru Nanak and they realized that he is the avatar of this Yuga. And they then, in the oral tradition, they say they made an offering to Guru Nanak. Then to Guru Nanak, they made an offering of what is most precious to them. And they gave him Vidya. And ascetic sadhus, who are warrior sadhus, were also brought into the villages, etc. so on. Sometimes these Natha Babas or ascetic sadhus who were militants, they had ashrams nearby. And you can basically, if you have a son who wanted to learn and so on, they can drop the son off there. Or they may go after harvest for a couple of months there and learn whatever type of Vidya they want to do. And they taught all sorts of Vidya, from what's called scriptures, Shastar Vidya to Shastar Vidya. So Shastar is scripture, Shastar is weapons and so on. And that was no different. And even today in Nihang Dals, because Nihangs are basically Sikh sannyasis. So when the Nihang Dals in the Misl period, etc., later on in the Riyasat period, when the kingdoms were formed, moved itinerant and so on. They looked after all the Gurdwaras, they controlled the Kal Takht, etc., the Kesgar Sahib and Patna Sahib, Hayur Sahib and so on. in those dals, in their Shoni means like military encampments, Sikhs in Maharaja Singh's period would drop off their children to learn the Vidya and so on. Sometimes these Nihang Babis, you can bring them to your place, to your village and so on. Give them Rasta Basjara, like, which is Rasta means like food, Bast is Bastar, Bastare, Kapade, and Chara, fodder for the horses, and just keep them in the local Gurdwara where they will give instruction, whether the instructions in Gurmat or whether there's instruction in the actual Vidya. Like, and so in the 19th century, you have people like Ajapal Singh, who's a famous, it's called Nahang Baba. And in Mahan Kosh, Baba Khan Singh Nabba talks about him, how he stayed in a near Nabba in a jungle where he would teach Gurmat, and of course he would teach Shastar Vidya. So sadhus have been doing this from the beginnings, and the Nahangs are but sadhus of the Sikh world. Like, that's what. So the Vidya itself, like I said, I'm just finishing off now a 3-volume book on Shastar Vidya. Okay, so volume 1 will in detail is a reference book for martial artists and for Sikh historians. And the book is just called Sanatan Shastar Vidya. And it's from what's called times of, from the prehistoric times, right to the Guru Nanak's time, right to Guru Gobind Singh's time, and so on. And in that, there's a full history given of the prehistoric history, the mythological aspect of it, and then right from the called Bronze Age, Iron Age, Classical Age, to the period of Guru Nanak, and all the way down to Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. So that, and then volume 2 deals with Sikh Gurus, and volume 3 deals with that, because there's a whole philosophy behind it. The Sikh martial philosophy of Shastar Vidya in English is best to call, it's an Irenic philosophy. So Irenic word literally means that which promotes peace through friendship, by connecting with all and everyone. So that is all given in volume 3. So the spiritual dimension, the historical dimension, the Sikh period, and then of course the pre-Sikh period. There's 3 volumes coming out very soon, and they'll be out. And alongside them, there's an instructional app coming out as well. Like, so people at the demand of Vidya is so much at the moment that I myself cannot keep up, nor can my students. So we're looking at an app which will basically be a global app, so people can study at home, minimum the basics and the intermediate levels of the Vidya. So that history. So history, as I'll say to you, is traced traditionally back to the Adeva Shiva. Then he moves through the Pashupatis, then Kapalakas, Naths, and then he comes down to the Sikhs and so on. And that's how the Vidyas come down throughout history.
Okay, and then how does that connect through to your Gurdev and yourself?
Okay, let's have a look. So a lot of Sikhs don't, like majority of Sikhs nowadays, when they think about warriors in the Sikh tradition, they associate with the Guru Har Gobind onwards. In the tradition, the Nihang traditions, we speak of Guru Nanak as Nanak Shasura, Nanak the royal warrior. And the idea that Guru Nanak was a warrior for many is not acceptable nowadays. It's not, I won't say acceptable, I would say they don't even think about that. Guru Nanak could be a warrior. So in the Nihang tradition, simply they point out that Guru Nanak was Sarvakala Purpur. That means he had all the powers, he had all the knowledge and so on. And colors literally means knowledge. If you look at Mahan Kosh and look at the word Kalai, it refers to as being powers. Guru Nanak in Bhagavatanavali, which is a text attributed by Mani Singh, early 18th century, he speaks of the 14 kalas that Guru Nanak studied, the 14 sciences and so on. And amongst them, the 11th kala is of archery and Shastar Vidya. So Nanak is spoken of Shasura. There's references in Sui Prakash and writings of Taras in Narottam and so on, which speak of Guru Nanak having a Barsha. There was a Gurdwara in Bengal once, which was known as Barsha Sahib. Gyan Singh speaks of it, Taras in Narottam speaks of it. And then there's also a tradition that, Risya, when Guru Nanak went there, he left a chakra and a tega, a sword of his, with the disciples there and Risya. And this found its way to Patna Sahib. And so that tega and that chakra, which is said to be Guru Nanak's now, you can find in the museum itself of Patna Sahib and so on. We also have references in Sui Prakash, in particular the Nanak Prakash section, the very first section, of references to where Bhai Mastana Ji and Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, they come across this Kanifa Sadhu. The Kanifa Sadhu is a very aggressive militant sadhu. And Bhai Mastana goes, Baba Ji Chadde Gate Mariye. And Chadde Gate is actually a very sophisticated technique of Shastar Vidya, where you can throw a person in such a way that you tear his testicles and break his neck and so on. But Guru Nanak Dev says, no, Madana, ite nahi hun. Ite Shastar di ladai, Shabd di ladai hai. In that period, in the medieval time, it was common practice for everybody to have some kind of knowledge, because Nowadays we have police and so on to protect us. In those days, there was no protection from police and so on and such. Okay, they had their constables and so on. They had their Fajdars and military leaders and so on, but you couldn't rely upon them. Every village would defend themselves. And Punjab being a border state, a lot of the villages would be fortified. Villages would have khaiyan, like moats around it and so on. And you couldn't rely on the kotawal, which are basically policemen and so on, to protect you, defend you, so on. So people had to basically organize themselves and defend themselves and their villages. And again, in those periods, there's raids from outsiders coming in. There's a lot of people. The banditry was very strong. So those are violent times. So everyone in that period of time had some kind of knowledge of how to defend and protect themselves. So Guru Nanak was no exception. Like I said, there's a reference to Gurdev or Barsha Sahib, there's a reference to his Tega, amongst the Nihangs, an oral tradition. So where the Barsha is written off in Bhagyan Gyan Singh Notam, where the Tadegate mentioning is again in Suri Prakash. There's even reference of Guru Nanak comparing true knowledge to Shastar Vidya and false knowledge, specious knowledge to Gatka, to Pattebaji. That is also found in Suri Prakash. All these references and everything else, you will soon find in my book. I've sourced them all in there, and you get the citations, you can check it out yourself and so on. And then also we have a Nihang Dals tradition that when Guru Nanak went to Kurukshetra, and there a Rajput was hunting and he presented a deer, and Guru Nanak cooked it, and then the Brahmins were upset, of course. And the Brahmins being upset by Guru Nanak cooking venison, particularly on a special day like this Suraj Grahan, the solar eclipse. Guru Nanak, they uttered that famous Mas kar muh chade gyan dhyan. And that shabd which talks about how it's foolish to argue of meat, mas kar muh chade. To argue about meat, to discuss meat is foolishness, because there's higher things to discuss, spirituality and so on. And at that time, at the end, when Guru Nanak was asked, okay, then if you're a Kshatriya, that's what Guru Nanak was making an argument. So look, I'm a Kshatriya, hence I can eat meat. Okay? And then the Pandits there said to Guru Nanak, if you're a Kshatriya, where are your weapons? Now, some of the old Jamsakis, they say Guru Nanak said, Naam is my weapon. But in the Nihang oral tradition, they speak of that Guru Nanak lifted his chola, and under his chola was a talwar, Shastar. Like I said, many Sikhs they find it very difficult to reconcile Guru Nanak to being a fearless Shastra Astra Tari. But this notion that Guru Nanak was Sabka Papur was well established. In terms of Guru Gobind Singh, by Nanda Guwaji, he writes what's called Jyot Vigas, a text. And in there, in Persian, he gives a beautiful he gives verses where he talks about Guru Nanak's talwar and his big and his spear and how fearless he is. And before him, even Rama and Lakshmana and these great heroes of what's called Persian law, Rustam and so on, are insignificant in the face of the ferocity and the skill of martial skill of Guru Nanak. So this idea of what's called giving a martial veneer to Guru Nanak was found in the times of Guru Gobind Singh as well. So what we have now is Guru Nanak as a Shah Sura, a noble warrior who, with Shabda Guru, challenged the hypocrisies, he challenged the injustice around the world, right from Makkah, Medina, all the way down to Bengal and Tibet and South India and so on. And he seems fearless. And I don't think any Sikh would disagree with that Guru Nanak was fearless. And he challenged hypocrisies, injustice and so on. But where needed, he was also a warrior. Although in his lifetime never used the battle techniques and so on. But you must realize, when some Sikhs criticize them, there's even Sikhs out there who actually say that Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh espouse two different philosophies. They're not one. Guru Gobind Singh basically adopted militancy, and Guru Hargobind and Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj was actually a pacifist. That is not true. You can say even Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh was a pacifist in the sense that he writes Hinsa Dharma Tyago Kema Dharma Rago. So he says Hinsa Dharma Tyago, forsake evil thinking. And violence, hinsa, violence, forsake violence and evil thinking, love the dharma of forgiveness. That's in Sablo Granth. So Guru Gobind Singh is not violent. But if there's no other way, Jo Kajam Hilte Dar Kajash Halastan Bartan Samshir Dast, if the last resort, there's nothing else you can do to ensure that you are not persecuting someone, to obtain justice, then the weapon was there. And as for Guru Nanak there, that's those famous lines. When you read lines like in Guru Granth Sahib itself, Joto Prem Khilan Ko Chao Sirta Tali Gali Mari Ao, It Perpa Mar Petrije Sirtije Kana Kije. So if you wish to follow it's Yoko Prem Khilan Ko, if you wish to play the game of love, because that's what Bhakti is. Gurmat is a game of love. But if you wish to follow the path of Gurmat, which is a game of love, then you must present your head on your tali, on your palm, offer your head. And then you may step on my path, says Guru Nanak Dev. And on this mark, if you offer your head, then you do not care what people say. So you don't care what people say. So the idea, that's the inspiration behind. When you ask, what are you going to go? Look at Guru Gobind Singh asking 5 heads and become a Sanchar. The inspiration behind that is Guru Nanak Dev. And in the Sanatan mindset of Buddha, the old, when I say Sanatan, just think with Pratan, like in the traditional old, what's called understanding of Nihangs, everything that is in Sikhi, everything is inspired by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Guru Nanak Dev he's the Adi Guru. Like, so whatever Guru Gobind Singh did, the inspiration behind that is always Guru Nanak. Whatever Sikhs did, Sikhi did, Guru Nanak is the source of all things. So in that context, Guru Nanak, whose Jyot is also found in Guru Angad Madar Ramdas, it's the same Jyot. Nanak Guru Gobind Singh to the Gesis Hamara hai. So Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, they're the same Jyot, same philosophy, same everything. They're the two sides of the same coin. So you cannot differentiate. If you're a Sikh in the Nihang tradition, the Buddha tradition, you cannot distinguish between Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh. And not in terms of distinguish as persons. I mean, their ideology, their philosophy is exactly the same. Guru Nanak is Guru Gobind Singh. Guru Nanak is Guru Angad Madar, Har Krishna, and so on. There's one. And then after Guru Gobind Singh, then you have the Ad, Dasam Sablo, Panth, and Shastar. That's the Guru's group now. So, like I said, I lost track of what we're doing. What question you're asking?
No problem. What I wanted to then ask you was, who is your Gurdev's Gurdev, and where does he trace his learning from?
Okay, let me give you exactly words. Okay, so my Gurdev's name was Nidar Singh, but that's a Dal name. That's not his family name. Okay, his family name he did not reveal to me because Nihangs generally don't. So when you join Nihang Dals, they will give you a Dal name. So like my Dal name is actually Nidar Singh, but I don't really use it like. And then in the Akhara, you were given also, if you have certain characteristics and so on, they'll give you certain names as well. Like, so my Gurdev's Akhara name was Katapa Singh, someone who beats you, and so on. Like mine is Nidar Singh. So Nidar Singh is my actual Akhara name. My Burdal Dal name, name is Nidar Singh, and my family name is Sarjeet Singh Bains. Okay? So when I'm home, with my mom and dad and father and so on, I'm not going to be Nidar Singh like. Okay? I'm going to be Sarjeet Singh. And when I'm in the Akhara, then I become Nidar Singh. And in the same way, my Gurdev, so he was a family man. He had a family. He had 2 sons and a daughter, etc., and so on. So his learning is this way. Let me explain now. So Baba Nidar Singh. So I just called him Baba Ji, like, because it's not tradition amongst Punjabis to call your elders by name, like, and so on. So for him it was Baba Ji. For me it was Baba Ji. So my Gurdev Ji, or Baba Ji, he learned his Vidya from Baba Gyan Singh. Or Gyana Rab, they call him, in the Buddha and so on. Gyana Singh learned from one Baba called Mangal Singh. And in fact, there was 2 Mangal Singhs, so Sheed Bagwale. The elder Baba Mangal Singh, who was the actual Jathedar in Sheedanabad, he belonged to Tarnadal Misl, Baba Deep Singh. And he was the younger brother of Baba Gurmukh Singh and Sadhu Singh of the Baba Kali Nihangs and so on. So whereas so Baba Gurmukh Singh, he learned his Shastar Vidya from Baba Sawan Singh Bangru, who fought the Anglo-Sikh wars, but his Gurmat Vidya was Baba Ram Singh Sarhali Wale, and so on. So you can have more than one Gurdev. So you can have a Gurdev who teaches you for Shastar Vidya, you can have a Gurdev who teaches you Gurmat, you may have a Gurdev who teaches you Kirtan or whatever. So you can have several Gurdev, just like in school you can have several teachers. And the word Gurdev, whereas amongst the Muslims, they tend to use the word Ustad, just the Ustad Kiti Jawe. Amongst the Hindus, they use the word Acharya, Jito Acharan Sikhiye, like good conduct and so on. Amongst the Nihangs, amongst the Khalsa, the teacher has always been spoken of as a Gurdev, like, okay? The one who takes you from darkness to light, okay? So the Gurdev himself is just like it's a more learned Sikh, that's what it is. So you cannot compare Gurdev to the called Ishtadev, which is Nanak Guru Gobind Singh and the 10 Gurus and Ard Granth and so on. He's just another Sikh. He's just a Sikh who's been there longer and he has knowledge which he can transfer to you and so on. So my Gurdev learned from Baba Gyan Singh. Baba Gyan Singh learned from the 2 Mangal Singhs because he learned from both of them. There's Bada Mangal Singh and Shoda Mangal Singh. The Shoda Mangal Singh was the one who taught him, but Bada Mangal Singh was the actual Gurdev of the Akhada at that time. Then Baba Mangal Singh learned from Baba Santa Singh. They both learned from Baba Santa Singh Bangu. Baba Santa Singh Bangu learned from Lakha Singh. Lakha Singh learned from his brother Baba Singh, Maro Kambiwa, the famous one, who was spoken as the greatest swordsman in the Sikh Panth. So it's called Surom and Sirmor. And Sukha Singh had learned from Baba Buddha Singh. Buddha Singh had learned from Baba Darbara Singh. So Baba Darbara Singh, Sood, was a Rajput. Okay, and he was the grandson of Baba Kalyana Sood, who was a Sikh of Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Okay, and after Kalyana Sood, he became Shaheed and so on. His son, and then his grandchildren all become Khalsa, etc. So on. They all became great Shaheed. And what we have now, except for Baba Darbara Singh, Baba Darbara Singh was also the second Jahdar of Buddha Dal as well. So the Akhada called Baba Darbara Singh Akhada. So let me explain about the Akhada system. So the Akhada means a school or something like a battlefield. The first Akhada of the Sikh Panth is named Ranjit Akhada, which means the invincible. It was established. So this goes. So after Guru Nanak attained the Vidya from Natha Babas, he would pass the Vidya on to Baba Buddha Ji. So there's a tale here. Let me explain this bit. When Guru Nanak Dev, towards the end, decided to pass on his jodh to someone else, he first tested his Sikhs. And all the Sikhs, every Sikh of his, all failed except Baba Lena Ji, who then became Guru Angad. And Baba Buddha Ji had been with Guru Nanak for a long time. And when he failed his test, and the manner he failed, that'll be in the books anyway. So when he felt very disheartened, because Baba Buddha Ji was from the beginning Guru Nanak Dev. From the age of 10 years old, 12 years old, he'd been serving Guru Nanak Dev. And when Guru Nanak went on the Adasis, Baba Buddha Ji went to what's called Guru's home, Baba Tripta and so on, and then he served the Guru's family. And so Baba Buddha Ji is spoken of in the Nihang tradition and Sikh tradition as the Shiromani Sikh, as the greatest Sikh, okay, the supreme Sikh, because there's no one with his Siddhika and what he did and so on. Baba Buddha Ji was the one who built the Gal Takht and so on. Baba Buddha is the one who gave the Tilak of Guru to Baba Lena, Guru Angad, Amardas, Ramdas, Arjan Dev, Guru Hargobind. So there's not many figures more revered than Baba Buddha Ji. And even Guru Arjan Dev, just before his Shahidi, Guru Ashemi instructed Guru Hargobind that to look upon Baba Buddha Ji as if he would look upon Guru Nanak Dev. So Odi Qadar bahut sikh kita, because he was the greatest Sikhs. But at that time when he failed, and again this is oral tradition from the Nihang and the Akhara tradition, when Baba Buddha Ji failed to observe all the instructions of Guru Nanak Dev at the time and failed the test, he felt really low in himself, that he fell from Sikhi life. And a true Guru always nurtures his Sikhs. And Baba Buddha Ji had never failed his Guru, ever. But this time he did. And so Guru Nanak, they say, gave him his final instruction. So Guru Nanak Dev is the one, if you look at the Nihang traditions, the oral tradition, but the Vidya, Shastran ki Vidya, was attained by Guru Nanak Dev from the Nathas who came from the Kapalaks, the Pashupata Shiva, and so on, these traditions coming down. And then Baba Buddha, he attained his Vidya, Guru Nanak Dev. Okay, Guru Nanak Dev instructed Baba Buddha Ji in the Vidya. Baba Buddha Ji would then become, then Guru Arjan Dev, Guru Ashemi mentions this, Guru Arjan Dev would ask Baba Buddha Ji to pass on this Vidya to his son Guru Hargobind. So the Vidya Guru Hargobind is Baba Buddha Ji. Although Guru Hargobind is the actual Guru of Guru Baba Buddha Ji. So there's a tradition where Baba Buddha Ji, that were when Guru Angad, Amardas, Ramdas, Arjan Dev, Hargobind, all the Sikh Gurus would do Peri Hat to Baba Buddha Ji. And of course, Baba Buddha did Peri Hat to them. They recognized, they did Peri Hat because he's a Shiromani Sikh and who had Dachshund Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And he did Peri Hat to them because they were his gurus, spiritual guides and so on. So Guru Hargobind was then instructed by Baba Buddha Ji, and in the Nihang traditions, it tells you completely, quite clearly that all Kala, Shastran ki Vidya, jo hegi hai, jinni bhi hegi hai, all that there is, it is from Baba Buddha Ji, because Baba Buddha Ji was blessed by Guru Nanak Dev. And then when the Akal Takht was created, and Baba Buddha Ji helped construct it, and so on. And you must also realize the militancy, like building the army and stuff in Sikh tradition, it began with Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Guru Arjan Dev, so from the very beginning it said that Guru Nanak Dev realized that in time he is such called orchard of Sikhi would need protecting and so on when the time is right. So alongside Shabd Guru, you need Shastar Guru. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji, who began according to Sikhani Paktamala, which is another text attributed by Mani Singh Ji. That is Guru Arjan Dev Ji, who began to what's called bring in soldiers and so on. Rajputs, etc., others and so on, and start giving instruction, martial instruction, so on. Baba Buddha Ji began instructing Guru Hargobind Ji, and then Guru Hargobind was a very competent student, learned very quickly, and so on. He's a physical giant, super fit, etc. And on Guru Hargobind's training regime and all this, and how he trained and practiced, that's all my books as well. Like so, Guru Hargobind, Vidya Guru, Shastar Vidya, Baba Buddha Ji, and when the Akal Takht was created, alongside the Akal Takht, they created the Kal Purkhiye. Okay, the Purkh means men of the Akal Takht, the warriors of Akal Takht. They know, and the army is known as Akal Sena, Akaliyan di Sena. Okay, they who worship Akal Purkh and so on. And Akal Purkh di Sena, Akal Takht's army was known as Akal Sena, but informally at this stage, they were known as Buddha Dal. And you'll find that throughout history, sometimes things at the beginning, before they fully crystallize, are known as informally. For instance, let me give you an example. Like the word Khalsa, like most Sikhs associate the Khalsa with Guru Gobind Singh. Guru Gobind Singh established the order of Khalsa, and then the Sikhs became Khalsa. But we have Hukamname of Guru Hargobind and Guru Tegh Bahadur, where they address, okay, like Purv ki sang to mero Khalsa hai, Dakhan ki sang to mero Khalsa hai, and so on. So even Guru Hargobind, Guru Gobind, and Guru Tegh Bahadur are speaking of the congregation being Khalsa. I mean, Khalsa just means someone who's loyal to the Guru. Just because you're Amatari and you go Panj Kakar, if you're not loyal to the Guru, you're not the Khalsa. Understand? Loyalty what makes you a Khalsa. And Guru Gobind Singh himself speaks of Dunichand Merchant to Mere Khalsa in his letter. So he's speaking to Dunichand Merchant, who obviously not Singhs, but he's still calling him Khalsa in his letter as well. And these are historical Khalsa. You can look them up in Nidar Singh's works on Hukamname, etc., and so on. Well, let's go on. So Baba Buddha Ji became the instructor of Guru Hargobind. Guru Hargobind then taught his elder son, Baba Gudipta Ji. Gudipta Ji will then go on to teach his younger brother, Guru Tyagmal, who in time, because of his battle heroics, came to know as Guru Tegh Bahadur. Okay, so Baba Gudipta Ji taught Baba Bidhi Chand. Okay, Baba Buddha Ji, Bidhi Chand, let me get this right in my head now, because I'm talking too much here. Baba Buddha Ji, Guru Hargobind, Baba Bidhi Chand, go to Baba Gudipta, Guru Tegh Bahadur, and Guru Tegh Bahadur's Gurdev, like personal assistant, was Baba Darbara Sood, who was only a 16, 17-year-old. So when Guru Tegh Bahadur went to the east, to Assam, Baba Darbara Singh was with him. And then when Guru Gobind Singh was born, this is again oral tradition speaks of this, when Guru Gobind Singh was born, Guru Tegh Bahadur instructed Baba Darbara Singh to now return, go and do darshan of Guru Gobind Das, the child, and then leave for Punjab, and on the way inform all the people that the Pachangi has been born, like the Sahibjada has been born, so they can prepare for him that when they return back to Punjab and so on. Baba Darbara Singh, they said they didn't want to leave, but being Guru's hukum, he had to go, and he was also then given the pag by Guru Tegh Bahadur to carry on teaching. In other words, go to Punjab and establish his khada. So the khada, original khada, is a Ranjit khada. Then Baba Buddha Ji taught that. And then Baba Buddha Ji teaching that. And then Guru Hargobind started teaching himself as well. And then from this Ranjit Akhara, which is based on the Akal Takht, there are shakan, like it's called branches coming out. And so warriors like Baba Bidhi Chand, Bhai Jetta and so on, they would all instruct people. And so there's khadas named after them and so on. And the khada that I belong to is from, like I said, it's from all the way from what's called Baba Buddha Ji to Guru Hargobind to Baba Bidhi Chand, Baba Bidhi Chand, Baba Gudipta Ji, then to what's called Guru Tyagmal, who became Tegh Bahadur, Baba Darbara Singh. And Baba Darbara Singh then came back to Punjab in the Amritsar region, and he began to teach the Shastar Vidya. From Baba Darbara Singh, in time of Baba Buddha Singh, so Baba Darbara Singh was also known in times of Guru Gobind Singh as Darbara Singh Diwan. Take a Diwan means like a minister of Guru Gobind Singh. So he was like a chief minister of Guru Gobind Singh. And he also looked after a treasury as such. So when anything came to Langar and so on, people deposited kode and weapons and shastra and so on. He took a record of all that, and he would be the one looking after all that. And wherever they were distributed and so on, he would be, with the instruction of Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj, he would then distribute amongst the Sikhs and Singhs where it was needed and so on. So in time, Baba Darbara Singh, after Baba Banod Singh, so after Banda Bada's time and Baba Banod Singh came about, after death of Baba Banod Singh in about 1723, Baba Darbara Singh was unanimously chosen to be the second Jahdar Puttadar. And at that time, he because he couldn't look after the Panth and wage a war with the Mughals and so on, and then also run a Akhara, he passed the Akhara on to Baba Buddha Singh. Okay, and Baba Bud Singh would then pass the Vidya to Baba Sukha Singh, Marokambi Wala, who's the most famous Sikh. He spoke with Shromi Sikh, Surom and Samor, individual who can go through 100 men of the enemy without touching them or being touched, kill the person, the commander he wants, and then come back. So he is our greatest swordsman in our history. Like, we never say he's greater than the Gurus, because we're Sikhs, we can't say that. But he definitely is, by far, the best. Like, but he was also the worst teacher ever as well. Like.
Just quickly on that, I just wanted to ask, is there like a specific example you can give me about him that shows how great he was at his swordsmanship?
Okay. Baba Sukha Singh is the only individual who's done more karname than anybody else. So people know about Baba Deep Singh. Okay. So Sikh history of the Misl period has phenomenal warriors, phenomenal warriors. Okay, great warriors. And so Natha Singh, Nod Singh, Deep Singh, Gurbakh Singh, Matab Singh, you can carry on. They're phenomenal warriors and unmatched warriors in skill. Because Guru Gobind Singh and Guru Hargobind realized that when Guru Gobind Singh said, the famous lines of Guru Gobind Singh, "Chidiyon se baaj tadwaun, billion se sher marwaun, sawa lakh se ek ladaun, tabi Guru Gobind Singh naam te aun." So this verse exists in various forms. Sometimes they say billion se sher marwaun. The sawa lakh se ek ladaun is everywhere. Like. From the beginning, Guru Gobind Singh realized that the Mughals, the Turks, and I must make the point here, there's a distinction between Muslims and Turks. There are Muslims, like Baba Sheikh Farid and so on, Sufis and so on, whose writings are found in Guru Granth Sahib, okay? So Sikhism, under no circumstances, is hostile to any particular religion or faith, so on. Okay, so the Nihangs of old, they make a distinction. They don't say Muslims as such. They will say Turks, because they're referring to those people who came from Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and ruled India. They're from Turkic origin, the Mughals basically. Okay, and even all Mughals were not hostile to Sikhs, because Akbar, he gave land grants to Guru Amadas, Ramdas, and so on. And then you had later on Bahadur Shah. Guru Gobind Singh helped Bahadur Shah as well. And even towards the end of his death, Guru Gobind Singh is going to meet with Guru Aurangzeb. And then you also have where Bahadur Shah, when he came to punish the Rajputs, he spared Guru Gobind Singh because he already knew about Guru Gobind Singh and he recognized him as a peer because his Parsi teacher was Bhai Nandlal Goa. As a consequence, Guru Gobind Singh talks in Vichitra Narak how the Babur ka Kar and the Guru Nanak's Kar are related and so on. And if anybody harms Guru Nanak's house, then Babur's punishes and so on. So in other words, I don't want to give this impression that that they're anti-Muslim and so on. Guru Gobind Singh in his armies, Guru Hargobind in his armies, they always had Muslims with them. Guru Gobind Singh had many called Shia Muslims and Sufi Muslims and so on. There's even Raitnames and conduct as to how Muslims should be found in like Sukhmana Sahib and so on. So Guru Gobind Singh made it quite clear, Mans ki jat ajat ek pachano. So him, everyone was one. But if someone is unjust, it could be your Saka Pra, could be your bloodline. If they're unjust and they're perpetuating evil, it's the Khalsa's duty to stop them. So Guru Gobind Singh's time and so on, let's have a look at this. Sukha Singh was a great warrior. Sukha Singh's Karname, let me just talk about him and so on. At the Sukha Singh, at the age of 9 or 10, decided. So Sukha Singh was from Marokambi and he was by caste, he was Uttarakhand. So Ratan Singh Pong talks about him, Marokambi. And he belonged to the Misl of Baba. So the Khada I belongs to the Bhai Mastana Singh or Mastan Singh Misl. Sometimes in history they call him Baba Mastan Singh. We refer to him Baba Mastana Singh. Baba Mastan Singh was a Langri, a cook of Guru Gobind Singh. And being a cook is a very responsible duty because if anybody's going to kill you, then the cook can easily kill you by poisoning your food. So only trusted people were given these duties of cooking and so on. But when Banda Bahadur came to the Punjab, in our Burdar tradition, we don't call him Banda Singh Bahadur because we believe that he was not Singh, he was a Bragi. And so when Banda Bahadur came to Punjab, Bhai Mastana came with him, Baba Mastana. And his Misl was called Bhai Mastana Misl. After Baba Mastana Singh, the Nana of Ratan Singh Pungu, Baba Sham Singh became the head of his Misl. So he became Sham Singh. And then you have like Karam Singh, Kanaya Singh, and eventually Baghel Singh. And Baba Baghel Singh time, the Misl, then, because Baba Baghel Singh established a kingdom in Hoshiarpur, and that's where the original Khada was in Hoshiarpur. And then Baba Baghel Singh time, the Jathedar was Baba Lakha Singh, Baba Sukha Singh brother. Then there's a bit of an issue between Baba Baghel Singh not providing Rastan Bastan time, and then Baba Lakha Singh moved down to Unko Moseb, which is now was a Nihang Gurdwara, Nihang place of one time. SGPC has it now, right? That's where I learned the Vidya. So Sukha Singh is the one who went with Bhai Mastana Singh to take the head of Masaranga. Okay, Sukha Singh is your backup man. Understand that? So by Siraj Singh, when the Mughals declared that no one can come and bathe at Harmandir Sahib, and they placed a large army guard around it, it was Sukha Singh and Siraj Singh, Siraj Singh's the nephew by Mani Singh, who then went and bathed there. Okay, when Masaranga desecrated the Darbar Sahib, it was Matab Singh and Sukha Singh who took him out. In Shoda Kalukara, when the Khalsa was surrounded and there was no way out, it was Sukha Singh who then led the Khalsa out. They could not, in any form, any way, see a way out. So Baba Sukha Singh.
Could you just repeat that again? That notification just interrupted you. Sorry.
Straight at the Mughal cannons, draw their fire on, and then dash through them. And the other Khalsa basically said this is madness. But he did. First time he failed. He got shrapnel in his leg and so on. Second time he managed to get through and break through. This was a Khalsa saved. But the story you want to hear is also that Sukha Singh was one time also excommunicated from the Pak. So Guru Gobind Singh has made it quite clear in the Ratnamis that a Singh should not treat with Kurimar. So people who practice female infanticide. And sadly, even today in modern day Punjab, amongst many Sikhs, aborting baby girls, treating girls as secondary to boys is pretty common. Like, they don't like to mention Gurdwara Sahib, but it's true. Like, and one time it was heard that for every girl you see in the Sikh world, 4 have been killed. Okay, so this female infanticide is pretty common in northern India, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Tories. So Sukha Singh's house, a daughter was born, and his mother, according to Kardashian, mother basically killed the daughter. And when the Panth found out, they excommunicated him. The Panth basically, the famous line Panth Prakash, Ke Kanya Devi ho Maat Hamari, the Devi Chandi, Kanya Devi, the virgin goddess, Devi Chandi, Kanya Devi ho Maat Hamari, ho Kanya ko Panth Pratap, Kanya Sevi Satguru Aap, that all the power the Khalsa has is of the Kanya, Devi, Chandima, and Kanya Sevi Satguru Aap. And Guru Gobind Singh himself worshipped Devi. The worship of Devi and Chandi I will address in another book of mine, translation of Gadanti. And but let's put this aside. So Sukha Singh was excommunicated, but even in his excommunication state, he came to the aid of the Khalsa to defeat a famous Gilja, a Pathan champion, and so on. And then when Sukha Singh died, I mean, I can tell you many stories about Sukha Singh. The way he died was with 60 men, warriors, he charged the whole Afghan army. Because in one hand, he's a bit arrogant as well. He believed that, because he's famous for going through enemy ranks, just weaving past them, dodging all the strikes, just slipping right through and killing the commander. Sukha Singh believed that if he can get to Ahmad Shah Abdali and take his head, then the Afghan raids are going to stop, which they would have. If Ahmad Shah was out of the picture, everything would stop. But unfortunately for him, as these 60 men went in, Ahmad Shah's warriors came in to confront him. In that battle, writes again in Gyan Singh, and Upton Singh Pangal, so on, Sukha Singh took out 50 Afghan champions, like with a sword. And each of his Singhs took about 10 each out, so on. But at the end, Ahmad Shah Abdali drew back behind his musketmen and cannons, and they blasted the Singhs. And the majority of them, Sukha Singh attained Shiddi there. He was only about 32, 33 when he attained Shiddi. And then his brother Lakha Singh escaped with a few Singhs, and they escaped not because they were afraid of martyrdom, just to ensure that the rest of the Panth knew that the Ahmad Shah Abdali did a quick march and he's upon him. And at that time, there was intersea warfare between the Pangis and the rest of the Khalsa Panth. So they went back, warned them, and this way saved the Panth from Ahmad Shah Abdali. Otherwise, there'd be a third Kalukara and so on. Sukha Singh was our Shiromani warrior. And in the Panth Prakash, it is clearly written, Suro Me Siramor, the grades of warriors and so on. And he had sworn from the age of 12 or 13 when he came out of the well, because when he took Amritsar, his parents were so afraid, they basically shaved his hair. They drugged him up. They put some pang in his whole sag, drugged him up, shaved his head, and basically made him patlat. And he was so distraught, he jumped in a well to commit suicide. But the legend goes, Sukha Singh was so light, he couldn't float. He just floated in the water. He couldn't drown. And as a consequence, a Nihang came by. They threw some ropes down. They lowered his brother Lakha Singh down, who was a year or two younger, and to pull him up. But he wouldn't come up. He wanted to drown because he felt so bad. I mean, nowadays you get idiot Sikhs who basically shave their heads and put it on YouTube and Facebook to show that they're cutting their hair, the barbers. But Sikhi ke sanswasa naal. And Sukha Singh believed that. But then a Nihang came by, and he made it quite clear that if you want to die, then fight, then die, striking the head of a Turk, the oppressors of our people, like, and save our Hindu race. In Panth Prakash, he always talked about Hindu race, because at that time, Hindus and Sikhs just won. So as a consequence, he came back, and then he made a pledge of Sanatan Sukha Singh that I swear that I will kill every enemy I have with a single blow, Jatka. The Shastar is called Chatke Vidya. So they call in Chatke Vidya means to kill with a single blow. As a consequence, Sukha Singh is our greatest warrior. But like I say, if you want to read about him, there's a book I've written as well, which is the Khada history. So I've given the Khada history from Baba Darbara Singh all the way down to my Gurdev in detail in volume 1 of Khada history. But there are 3 books on Shastar Vidya coming out. One book called Khada history, first volume, from Baba Darbara Singh all the way down to Baba Nidar Singh. And then I'm also doing a translation on Ugadanti Bani, so he talks about the Chandi aspect, because this is the thing that most Sikhs, find controversial with myself, that I'm a Chandi worshipper, which I am. Okay, so ask away, like.
So I just want to get your understanding on how Devi worship and Chandima and all of this fits in within the Sikh worldview.
Okay, so if you look at historical sources, there's more evidence for Chandi worship or the propitiation of Chandi in Sikh history than there is for the creation of the Khalsa Panth. Okay, so Chandi began to be dismissed early on by the likes of Bhai Veer Singh. So Bhai Veer Singh was a disingenuous scholar. He ignored the early texts. So the earliest text to mention that called Guru Gobind Singh, prior to the creation of Khalsa, appreciated Chandi. Okay, so before people get angry, so just listen to what I have to say. Like, so Guru Gobind Singh needed to mobilize the Hindu masses, and the Hindu masses had a superstitious mindset. So there's a tale that goes like this. One time, in Guru Gobind Singh Darbar, a Brahman was doing katha on the Mahabharata, and he spoke of Bhim beings and Arjun and all their great heroic deeds and so on. A Sikh or a Hindu, because at that time there's no real distinction, someone stood up and said, Maharaj, to the Brahman, how come our ancestors were so powerful, so great, and our state is so pathetic now that we're ruled by these Turks? The Brahman turned around and he says, because this is Kal Yug. And in the previous yugs, the Sat Yug, Dwapar Yug, Treta Yug, the Kshatriya had the blessings of Devi. The Devi emerged, gave their blessings, and thus they attained power. And without the blessings of Devi, no Hindu, no Sanatan Dharma practitioner can attain victory on the battlefield. And the Devi does not emerge in Kal Yug. Now, Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Maharaj Ji, Dasam Pasha Ji, they were listening in and they beckoned the Brahmin over them. And basically said, look, Brahmin, these people are already disheartened, like, and you are now basically dropping them further, like. And as for the Devi, if you worship her with devotion, she can emerge even this Kal Yug, and I will prove it so. So Guru Gobind Singh needed to mobilize the Hindu masses, and the Hindu masses of that period believed this can only be done if the Devi Ma gives her blessings, her Ashirwad, and so on. So the early Sikh text in Sikh history, which mentions Guru Gobind Singh propitiating the Devi, is a text called Das Gur Katha of Kavi Kankan, and the text is dated to 1699. Now, writings like Sikh Encyclopedia for Sikhism from Patiala, they acknowledge that the text is from 1699, but then they will say things like, oh, adulteration has been put into it, like someone's corrupted it. Everything they can't agree with, they say they've been corrupted and so on. And then you go throughout the text. So if you look at from Das Gatha onwards, and there are other kavis in the Darbar of Guru Gobind Singh as well, like, who also mention Guru Gobind Singh propitiating Chandi and so on. The famous kavi, the second Paigadas, who talks about Gur Chilla, like Baha Baha Guru Gobind Singh Ape Gur Chilla. Even he speaks about Guru Manai Kalka Khande Ki Vela. So this is all known. And then, so from the about 3 poets of Guru Gobind Singh's time, 2 poets from Guru Gobind Singh's time, on his Darbar, mention Guru Gobind Singh propitiating Chandi. And Pai Gadas, who is possibly his spirit as well, he mentions it. Bansavali Nama, Suri Prakash, no text prior to the Singh Sabha movement of the revisionists. Even Guru Sobha, which many Sikhs like to call, like Bhai Veer Singh, that text doesn't mention Devi worship, and so on by Guru Gobind. It doesn't also mention the creation of Khalsa, but there is in that text a reference to Devi 2 or 3 times, like to Bhavani. Okay, so there's a reference to Devi in that text as well. Like I said, in my text of Gudanti, I give all the evidence for it and so on. So what we have now is, so what does the Devi represent? I mean, what's the big problem with Sikhs with Devi and so on? When we Sikhs do Ardas, Pratham Bhagavati Simrke Guru Nanak Le Dhyaye. Okay, so you say the word Pratham is foremost, contemplate Bhagavati, then Guru Nanak Le Dhyaye. So the question is, what is Bhagavati that we, before even Guru Nanak, the founder of our faith, we contemplate? Now, Bhagavati, the average Sikh will probably say, oh, it means a sword. But what is a sword? A sword is a forged piece of metal on which you have shaped in a particular way and put an edge on it. How can that be more greater than Guru Nanak, like, who is Jagat Guru, Guru of the world, the Guru of the universe, and so on? How can that be greater than, how can that sword be greater than Guru Nanak? So the sword has to represent something. So let me explain how we look at it. So the sword, the talwar, is a symbol, is a pratik, as we say, of the Adishakti. So Adishakti is the primordial power. So in the Nihang tradition, the Akhara tradition I come from, we have Brahm, Vaheguru, who's Nirguna, has no qualities and so on. He's transcendental. And this transcendental Vaheguru, we speak of in the Akhara as the Shakti, source of everything. Okay? And the Shakti, the Adishakti, Shakti has a Shakti, and the Shakti is the energy, or we call it Adishakti, the primordial power. Now, energy has not been, it can't be created, it can't be destroyed, but it has a source according to our tradition, okay? And this Shakti, of the Shakt, is his Hukum. So the Shakt, the source, Brahma, Vaheguru, Akalapurk, that we worship, Rabji, he is the Hukmaran, the commander. Your Hukum Dinda Hega, the one who gives Hukmaran. Now, a king, his power lies in his Hukum. If you have a king whose Hukum is not obeyed by anybody, he has no power. So the Hukmaran's power is his Hukum. Hukum andar sabko, bahar Hukum na koi. The Hukum is his Shakti. And that's what the Devi is. So what happens now is Adishakti, Shakt, Adishakti. Adishakti in a martial form is represented by a weapon, the sword. The sword then gets personified. Personification, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਮੰਨ ਲਓ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਕੀਤਾ ਰੂਪ ਜੋ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਰੂਪ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ. So that talwar, the curved sword, has 8 strikes. Okay, Darna, Barna, Samta, Tirshe, etc. 8 strikes. And the word for strike in Sanskrit is hat. Whereas in the vernacular now, the word hat or hat in Sanskrit and Punjabi means hands. So the 8th strike becomes the hands. Okay? When the pentra moves, the Yudhan moves in Chandi, is very effeminate because it captures energy. So it looks like is effeminate, soft. So that gives his female, a female with 8 arms. And then when he advances and so on in a stealthy way, so then he has moves like a leopard, bag, or a tiger, and so on. In this way, we get the sword, which is personified. And this personification of the sword, we need in order to not only to train with it. So when I teach Shastar Vidya, I teach the forms of Chandi. In order to teach a form of Chandi, I've got to have some kind of form to it. And also poets, they also utilize the form. So when Guru Gobind Singh writes Chandi Ribad, like Ro Hoi Maha Mahi, Rakash Pakhne. So when Ro Hoi, the great Maha Maya, is greatly angered. Okay, Uishi Mangaya Rakesh. So she called upon the line. Guru Gobind Singh is also personifying the Devi. Okay, so he's talking about, so poets use personification in their poetry. Artists, when they paint or they make sculptures, they personify concept of Devi. And in Shastar Vidya, we personified in terms of fighting form and energies and so on. That's so the sword personified is the 8-armed goddess. Okay, the sword is the pratik representing of the Adishakti. The Adishakti is the Shakt. So let me explain this to you now. When you say, what do you mean by Chandi worship? It means Hukum da Palana. Okay, so when you say Pratham Bhagavati Simrke Guru Nanak Le Dhyaye, if you were to translate the word Bhagavati as Hukum, Pratham Vaheguru da Hukum Manke Fi Guru Nanak Le Dhyaye, that makes 100% sense. Because even above Guru Nanak Dev Ji is Vaheguru da Hukum. Hukum hai andar sabko, bahar hukum na koi. Nothing's outside the Hukum. So Bhagavati is Hukum. Chandi itself is Hukum. In ancient Sikh texts, they speak of Chandi as teaching Satnam, like the true eternal Nam, because that's what Hukum does. Hukum is instruction in Satnam. So for Sanatan Sikhs, so what I mean Sanatan Sikh, I mean Sikhs who have a traditional mindset which is distinct from the revisionist Sikhs. And Sikhism became revised. As a consequence, people like Bhai Veer Singh, when they came across Chandi in Pant Prakash, in Ratan Singh Pangu's writings, he expunged it. He just got rid of it. So even in his writings, in certain places, because he couldn't ruin the syntax or the structure of some of the verses, there is still found indirect mention of Chandi and so on. For people like Bhai Veer Singh, deliberately cut out Chandi Prasang from Ratan Singh Pangu. Bhai Veer Singh then made a whole case that there's no mention of Chandi apart from Guru Dasami and so on, Sukha Singh and so on, where there is plenty mentioned. There are weapons of the Guru, historical weapons with Chandi on there. There's Gurdwaras in Darbar Sahib, near what's called Lachi Beri and so on. There was a mandir of Devi there. In Hajur Sahib, if you still go to Hajur Sahib now, you go inside the actual Harmandir there. On the gold motifs inside, you'll see Durga riding on a tiger, on a lion. And then Patna Sahib had Chandi there up to about 1852, basically with a painting on a wall of it, which got, when the earthquake came or something, it got destroyed and they didn't renovate it. So Chandi imagery is found on the Nishan Sahib Hamar. Ji Singh, we have records of flags of Banda Bahadur, that a flag of Banda Bahadur was captured by the Mughals and so on, and there was on that flag there was a lion and Hanuman on it. Okay, so our flag was obviously destroyed. If there's a lion on there, you will also have Chandi on there and so on. So images of Chandi are found in Sikh manuscripts. They are found in what's called Sikh Gurdwaras. They're found in early weapons. Okay, you can't just order even very early weapons like Baba Santa Singh weapons and so on guns and so on cannons and so on. But if you look upon Chandi as Waheguru the Hukum, and the personified form is just being utilized for martial training. So the worship of Chandi is in effect training in Shastar Vidya. Okay, because ko batan ko poochte bas ko mitra ko pujanta kur kriya. So where we acknowledge the imagery, we accept the imagery. Just like many Sikhs now have images of Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, which are not actually images of them really. They're just imaginings. Images of Chandi and Shiva and the deities are more iconographic representation, so they have a meaning behind them and so on. So in ancient Sikh temples, you'll find that 70-80% of all artwork in the 19th century, 18th century on Sikh building was to do with Hindu mythology and so on. And so they are pretty comfortable with it. So Chandi worship, I'll end here, for me personally, is following the hukum of Waheguru. That's what it is. And the hukum for me as Shatatari is to rise every morning at what's called Amrit Vela sunrise, do my Naam Simran, Bandagi, as I run. Okay, so an hour run. Then I come back, do an hour or so, 2 of what's called hour down to Bedka, and then an hour of Sanjam Kriya Prayam and so on. And then train my Shastar Vidya. I'm now teaching my students here now. So that's what it means, Chandi worship. Chandi worship is Hukum Damanagada. So Chandi represents Hukum, and that Hukum teaches you Satnam. What is Satnam? The teaching of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. That's what Chandi is.
Thank you. The only thing then, I guess, just to clarify, would it be fair to say that a lot of the modern misunderstanding comes from a revisionist mindset in that we're looking back at history and then being like, oh, that's Hindu, that's Sikh, when in actuality, those distinctions didn't exist at that time?
So let's look at Sikhi in general. Sikhi is a Gadi Ra, which means like the highway. So in the Guru Granth Sahib, we have writings of Baba Sheikh Farid, Baba Pikhan Shah, which are Muslims like. Then we have writings of Bhakt Jayadev, and we have writings of Ramanand and so on. And so Ramanand is Vaishnav and so on. And so we have people from Jayadev from the 12th century, all the way to Guru Tegh Bahadur Maharaj Ji in the 17th century. And they all contribute to the Guru Granth Sahib. So Guru Granth Sahib is not speaking of religion, like mat we call that, understanding mat. He's talking about dharma like. So monks, the devotees of Krishna or Rama and so on, the bhakts, they believe that their Ishtadev, their personal deity, they love, its images to be found in everything. Amongst the Sufi Muslims, like Baba Sheikh Farid and so on, they believe in Badahat al-Wujud, that the essence of all is Allah. And amongst the Sikhs, now Sikhism is actually Vedantic. So in Sikhani Pagtamala, he actually tells the Sikhs is the essence of Vedanta. Okay? So what does Vedanta mean? Vedanta just means like to acknowledge everything and all things as Vaheguru. Okay? That everything is Vaheguru, Brahma ultimately. So there's you and me like this now talking, but our true self, our true Atma, once he's become lean from Atma, he just becomes, there's only Paramatma thing. Sab Gobind hai, Gobind avar na koi. That's Vedanta. As simple as that. So if you look at our Vedantic philosophy, okay, that everything is one, everything is one, and then look at the Vedanta view, the Bhakt and so on. The reason why you can have a Muslim from the 13th century, like Baba Sheikh, a 12th century called Christian worshipper, Devi, and then you can have others there and Sikh gurus and everybody together. And in the one version of Guru Granth Sahib, okay, there was originally two Granth Sahibs. There was the Kasbir and there was the Bhai Bano Bir, who were equally revered. You have also a female in there, Mirabai as well. And as a consequence, they are at the elevated spiritual level, at the Atmic level, as we say. Their vichar sochani is just one. Like the slight distinctions are just semantic and so on, because they are just speaking of the one truth, and this because there's only one truth. Like Ekonkar is only one truth, and they all speak in the same truth. And as a consequence, Sikhi is a Iranic philosophy, a philosophy which teaches that making peace through friendship. And Guru Nanak Dev is a setu band, meaning like a bridge. He bridges all together. Guru Nanak on one hand Bhai Mastana, on one hand he had Bhai Mastana, Bhai Bala, one Hindu, one Muslim, and so on. And then the famous saying Guru Nanak, when he says, Na ham Hindu, na Musliman. Okay? Now, one day, when the Singh Sabiyas came about, Singh Sabiyas are talking about Lahore Singh Sabiyas, the revisionists, which is, modern Sikhs don't recognize that now, they're the revisionists. The revisionists were born from the divide and rule policy of British Raj. Okay? So I'm a Hindu. I'm Gurdev, I'm Nidar Singh, and I'm a Hindu. I'm a Sanatan Sikh. Okay? And I'm proud to call myself a Hindu, but I am not Sanatan in the sense I worship idols. I'm not Sanatan in the sense I believe in Jatpat. I'm not Sanatan that I worship in superstitions. I'm 100% Khalsa, but I recognize my Sanatan origin. So Sikhs, as Margaret would say, are Hindus in a particular cultural context. Just like we are Sikhs now in England, we are British Sikhs, and there are Canadian Sikhs, and there are American Sikhs. In a particular cultural sense, we are Hindus, but not in the sense that we are idol worshippers. Even Bhai Veer Singh recognized this. Bhai Veer Singh says, Bhai Veer Singh in a footnote in his Surprakash, he says, if we say that we Sikhs are Hindu in the sense that we are Aryan, then we are. But if you say we're Hindus in the sense we are idol worshippers, then we are not. So there's a context you look at. And that's one of the main things that scares people about me, because they hear the word Hindu and they jump a mile like. But it's a particular context and so on. And even Guru Gobind Singh's Panj Pyare, they heralded from not just Punjab, all the way from Karnataka, Gujarat, and Orissa, and so on. So it was a pan-Indian movement for Guru Gobind Singh as well. Like, and now when I teach Shastar Vidya in India, so I have students in all corners of India. All of India, like, and once the app comes out, you'll be surprised how many people are coming into this, understanding Vidya and so on. So as a consequence, Gurmat is a Gadira, is a highway. So every other term, like a mat, anything that's a mat. So the universal teachings are the Gadira. So you can have universal teachings in Christianity, in Buddhism, Jainism, or even in no faith. Wisdom is wisdom. Okay, and in Gurmat, most Sikhs nowadays only recognize Sikhi as being theistic, not atheistic. But if you look at Guru Nanak's teaching, Shekar, She Guru, Shep Des, Guru Reko, Bes Anek. Okay? So there's 6 houses, the 6 schools of philosophy of Hinduism, like with Kumbhaminsa and so on, Vedanta, etc., and so on. All these, some of them are atheistic and some are theistic. Some are dualistic, some are non-dualistic, and so on. Guru Nanak recognizes all of them. Shekar, She Guru, Shep Des, Guru Reko, Bes Anek. So their Gur is, their Gur here means like secret is one, but they have many forms and so on. Because in an infinite universe, there's infinite ways of expressing truth and so on. That's why in the writings of Guru Gobind Singh and Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you'll have what you call philosophy, teachings presented in not only theistic terms, but in polytheistic terms as well. Like, and as a consequence, Sikhi is subtle. Khandayotaki, Balonaki. So this nonsense about basic, so Sikhi, that very basic, that's nonsense. Sikhi is not basic, it's sophisticated. And because modern day Sikhs are sacrificing, they're not really doing in-depth study of Sikhi. As a consequence, they oversimplify it and so on, make it into a God religion type and so on. That's what they're doing. Sikhi is complex, Sikhi is subtle, and in that context, the Gadira where you have Sheikh Feed, we have Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you have Baba Kabir Ji, Ramanand, Mirabai, all together traveling on the same path, even though they come from different eras, and they may espouse, superficially they may espouse different philosophies and so on, one the God of Islam and so on, but their universal message is what makes them, that universal message of love, Jin Prem Jyotani Prabhupada, that's what makes that called Gurmat. So even when Sikhs, like say, they quote from Guru Granth Sahib, usually, Ke na hum Hindu na Musalman, I mean, that's a shabd which starts off with what's called, with the word Guru Mukhavak Pachai Panjamai, Guru Mehla Panjama and so on. But then he ends by saying, so say Kabir and so on. In that shabd, the Guru is not saying that na hum Hindu na Musalman in the context that we seek. He's saying, Ke na, I'm not in the Jagda of Hindu Musalman. A Sikh has to rise above that. That's like you say, it's called Hindu Anna Turkana, Don Se Gyani Isyana. Like, so the Gyani, the Gyanwan Banda. So there are Gyanwan Bande in every community in the world, like, just as there are Murkh Bande as well. Like. As a Gursikh, we have to connect to the Gyanwan Bande, whether they be whatever faith, nation, and so on. And then in that society of Gyanwan, we will then attain that is Gurmat. Like. So Guru Granth said, modern day Sikhs, they have the saying that Agya Pe Kagi Tabichlaya Pan Sab Sikhun Hukum Hai Guru Mane Granth. Okay, it sounds very nice. But that word is not coined by Guru Gobind Singh or Sikh history. That's Gyani Gyan Singh say that. It's a simplification like Bani hai Guru, Guru hai Bani. Which the word Granth just means a book. The book can't be a Guru like, because the Brahman, the Vaheguru, is infinite, and infinite cannot be contained within the finite. What is infinite is Bani hai Guru, Guru hai Bani, which Bani and Masare. The Gyan within is infinite like. Okay, so you can't destroy that. So when idiots react, they burnt the Guru Granth Sahib. You can't burn they destroyed themselves, of course, their karma's gone now. You can't destroy Vaheguru, that's infinite like. And that infinite Guru can't be contained in a place, it's everywhere like. Chim Chim Amrit Barse, the Amrit is Barsa everywhere like. But the majority of people, they're Panda, as they say, the vessel. They cannot attain that Amrit, which is now raining down everywhere, because their Panda is upside down. Okay, and then some people, they do have the Panda on the right way up, so they're having Amrit, but their Panda is Ganda. They haven't got rid of Kam, Krudo, Mohankar. That's why you get these religious perverts and so on, molesting people and so on, the guys of religion, etc. and so on. So you need to have a Panda, which is turned up, your mind open to Gurmat, and then you need to be disciplined. Jap Tap Sanjam Dharma Kumar, you need to have that Jap Tap Sanjam as well. And thus you can then study Gurmat properly and Amal Karna. So you can practice it as well. And as a consequence, the Guru Granth Sahib his teachings are universal. They can't put them in a religious garb and so on. And whether you're a Khalsa or not, it depends on your karam like. Okay, your Purva karam determines where you become a Khalsa. And to be a Amatari doesn't make you a Khalsa. That's just the first step. Like being a Amatari is accepted, that if you wear the Panjikakar and take Amat Sanchar and so on, that is the Guru's hukum, yes. And the Guru Gobind Singh did say that any Sangh who becomes a Khalsa, I will vouch for him. So you could be a Saitari, but the Guru's not vouching for you, but you vouch for the Khalsa. But on the same token, if you're now an Amatari and the Guru's vouching for you, and then if you do take arm after that, the punishment is also greater as well. Like, so it's a double-edged sword in that sense. So the Gadira is there like as well. Like, okay.
No, that's really, really useful. When I announced that we were going to have this conversation, one thing that kept coming up was, he works with the RSS and this and that and the other. Now, I just want to ask you, what is the actual case?
Okay, let me explain this now. So in the last, so I came here in 95 from India, like, and in around 95 at the beginning, I basically traveled all over India after learning about Gurdev. And then at Kalifullah Singh Burja, I was aiming to start the Akhara, like Shastar Vidiya Akhara up there. And at that time, I ended up going to Guru Ki Vidya. There I disarmed about 25 Gatka batch. I had them all attack me. They disarmed them. So I was very popular there. Everybody learned Vidya from me. They wanted this, wanted that, and so on, so on, so on. But in that time, this is like 94, I think, 93 or 93, probably 94. And at that time, the Sikh militancy, like the Khalistan movement, depends on which side of the fence you are. For some, it's a militant terrorist movement. For others, it's a heroic battle, like the missile period type. So I came to England, say 95, I came back. Okay, so after about 11 odd years, I came back here. Previously, I tried to start Akhara. After I traveled all over India, I went to Adasis, Narmades, I went to Kalkal, Hardwar. So I traveled everywhere. And eventually, I ended up in Kali Phula Singh. And Harbhajan Singh was just beginning his Jatadari at that time. And I went to a local Ambasari Gatka schools there. And I just went in. There was a guy called Harbhajan Singh there who used to teach Gatka in Baba Deep Singh Akhara and so on. And I just went in and I took his top guys on, unarmed, and they had weapon and sword and disarmed them. So right away, I impressed everybody that I could do this. And so there's a lot of thirst that time. And don't forget, at that time, I was young as well. I was naive in some ways that I could start in. So the Sikh militant period, or what you want to call militancy or terrorism, depending on the side of the fence you are, it was coming to an end. Okay, so in Punjab, it's still for the odd shootings and bombs and extrajudicial killing by the police was still going on. So Amritsar was obviously the hotbed of it all. And there's me trying to start Akhara there. And as I started there, there's a guy called Bapuji, who was a local Gatkebaj. He's the one who's trying to sort things out, who'll get me to teach and so on. He's an old guy who's ex-Indian Army. He had seen old Nihangs do great Vidya in the past, he said, and this was the old Vidya, he said. He recognized what it is. And as a consequence, he wanted me to teach. And we talked to the Nihangs and others and so on. And the Nihangs basically at the time were scared. They said, if you start teaching here, the police will come and so on. So he decided to teach either in Guru Gobind Singh Ji or nearby or in other villages nearby. So as a consequence, then I went up to my village and that Bapuji was arrested by the police, etc. and so on. They accused him of harboring a terrorist, which is obviously me they're talking about. And someone said that there's a guy coming in and out of his house, blah, 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 and all this. And at that time, I used to carry this different, like a sisa, which sort of stuck out. And they basically thought it was a pistol and so on. So I had to present myself at the police force, at the police station there in Amritsar, or I had to call, otherwise I'll be in trouble with the police. So I had to weigh things up. The locals were split. The young men basically said, don't go, because they'll kill Sikhs, they'll take you out one side, shoot you, wherever, and so on. But then I thought, if I make a run for it, I won't get very far much. No one knew I was from England because I never spoke English. I always pretended to be in Nihang and spoke Punjabi. Last thing I want is to attract people to me, because if the police knew I was from England, more likely they'll arrest me and then they want money from me probably. And as a consequence, at the end, I didn't want to get that Bapuji in trouble, so I went to the police station. Even though the others young men who are disarmed and so on, they said, don't go there. I got in there. Fortunately for me, the guy who listened to me was a Brahmin guy, an officer. He was reasonable. I gave the whole lowdown of it there, like I'm talking to you now. I talked about the origins of Shiv and all this and this. And he made it quite clear that you can't teach here. This Vidya is not here now. And I agreed. I said, whatever you say, that's fine. Like, I don't care. So, but when I came out, the fact that I walked out of a police station without getting arrested or beaten and so on, some of the guys who have felt humiliated by me disarming them, they basically thought, hang on a minute, he must be a black cat. So they put two together and made 10 or something like that. And then at that time, Bapuji said basically, look, these guys are linked to the Khastanis and you've been basically, they Gatka schools, you've been humiliating them by disarming them and so on. It's not safe for you. And it's best that you leave. And I thought about it. Then I said, okay, fine then. But he didn't know I was from England until I spoke English to him. Then he realized. Then about a week or two later, I was back in England. And when I come to England, of course, everybody's Kastani here, like. And in England, unlike in Punjab, where you can't tell who's a Kastani, who's a policeman dressed as a Kastani, who's a Palestinian dressed as a policeman, and majority of people in between who are the criminals. And I had family members killed by Khastanis. I also had family members who were Khalistanis who were killed by the police in Patiala. Then so on. So everything's mixed and so on. But in the West here, in England, in Europe, in America's account, they had a very romanticized understanding of the Khalistani movement. Not the nitty-gritty, violent, ugly as he was like. So when I came here, I was not concerned about politics. I never am. And I just wanted to keep the Vidya of Guru Gobind Singh alive. Guru Gobind Singh's hukum is Shastar Vidya. And as I began to teach here at the beginning, I did not teach openly, publicly. I taught only 2 students to get my bande. I wanted to have pakke bande with me. And that's Pamjit and Iqbal. Pamjit, they're all with me to this day. Like, that's the beautiful. All the people I've taught from the beginning, they are still with me now. Okay, apart from maybe one individual who couldn't grow up. Apart from that, everybody else is with me to this day, and they're still supporting us, the Vidya and so on. So the first 10 years I worked, brought my family and so on, brought the kids up and so on. Eventually the guy said, look, we want you to teach properly, like, to write the books. But in order to write the books, I have to research everything. I cannot just present what my Gurdev said to me. I have to do research. So I spent 25 years with my students like Nihang Dals and so on. We went to all over northern India, wherever there was frescoes or images or manuscripts and so on, we digitized them all. I spent many years from 93 onwards. I spent many years recording interviews and audio recordings. I have 6 to 9 hours of interviews with Baba Santa Singh and so on, which again are not made public yet, but will come out with our books. And so we're looking at doing a 9-volume. There's a 9-volume book, 9-volume work coming out on Sikhi as well, and the hidden history of Sikhs. So that's coming out with Gashi House in time. And again, so all this requires Khoj. Khoj karde, wadi wa karde, khuje goshan hasan gain, duje pai gadaji. When I came here, everything was, there's no knowledge. There's Nihangs in England before I came. There's great Nihangs like Baba Noop Singh and for Kent and so on that way. There's other Nihangs around here, but they were early individuals. And they basically just stayed, their lives were just private and so on. But when I came here for the first time, the Nihang history, the Nihang philosophy, and it's just not Nihang stuff, it's Sanatan, which is even rare amongst Nihangs, the Sanatan element is recognized by elders who understand what Sanatan is. So you have texts like Sanatan Singh's writings when he talks about him being Shakti Sanatan Nihang. When I did my research, when me and Pamdi did our research and presented in 2004 to Baba Santa Singh, he gives beautiful letters to us, recognizing, and he talks about how Nidar Singh, Pamdi presented the Sanatan history of the Panth. So the Sanatan word is rare, but it is there. And the Sanatan understanding is rare, but it is there amongst the learned. And unfortunately, majority of the Nihangs are not learned. Okay, they may dress in Nihangs. In fact, many cases now they dress in Nihangs, not necessarily Nihangs either. So what we have now is coming over here, basically shook up the whole system. Basically, I belong to Burdal. Baba Santa Singh was the Burdal head, and of course, Baba Santa Singh did not side with the Kastanis. You can go on YouTube and there's videos of Janelle Singh as well. I won't call him Santa, say Janelle Singh from Chowk Mehta, because Bindrawala is about Mohan Singh. So again, I apologize to my friend anybody. So Janelle Singh speaks of Baba Santa Singh is the only one who has opposed him in the Punjab, which is true. Baba Santa Singh did not see eye to eye with the Khalistani movement. In fact, what he said was, "Is samay di gardish hai." It's just the dust thrown by time and led by hotheads, basically, and it will settle down and nothing will come off it, apart from a lot of people getting killed on all sides, and which this is exactly what happened. So what we have now is, when I came here, I couldn't care less about Khaistan or Hindustan or Pakistan or anything like that. And as a consequence, of course, this upset certain groups in England who are politically inclined and so on. And then vigilante groups approached me. They wanted me to teach that, but I refused to teach the vigilantes as well. And those certain individuals up in commentary and so on, and others came and so on. And as a consequence, then with the Sanatan element coming out, and people over here, because when it comes to the Khalistani movement, so prior to the Khalistani movement, Hindus and Sikhs lived very cordially. And you'll find Hindus going to Gurdwaras, and even Sikhs, when I was growing up in India, had no problem. As a kid, I just wanted prasad. So if the Pandit is offering more prasad, that's where I go. I go to the Pandit. If the Gurdwara is offering more prasad, as a kid, I went there. So in the villages, independence is like that. And there was no hostility between Hindus and Sikhs in that sense of the word. Yeah, but after 84, everything became polarized. And then hate came in. As a consequence, it took a long while to shake that hate off. It's gone now. So you see now the protests in India with the farmers. You see the Hindu farmers alongside Sikh farmers and Muslim farmers and UP, Haryana, Punjab. So that is all gone now. But in that time, there was that hostility. And in England, there's an ugly side to the Khalstanis in England, which absolutely hated Hindus. And of course, amongst the Hindus, there was also those who hated the Sikhs as well. Because both sides had got people killed. So depending on which side of the fence you were, you hate the other side. And Sikhi cannot be, there can be no, if you want to be a Sikh, you can't have hatred. Okay, na ko beri, na ko bagana, Wani says. And so you're going to have that middle ground and so on. As a consequence, with me presenting Adasis, Nirmal Sepan, and Nihang traditions, vegetarianism was very strong. And when I came, I'm surprised in Birmingham, they were doing openly. At one time, they would beat you up for standing just next to a fish and chip shop and so on. The fanatics of that would call hot-headed and so on. But now it's not the case and so on. So when I came in Nihang traditions, we're not vegetarians, okay, and we're not teetotalers, but we're not drunks and so on either, and we're not druggies either, like. And disciplined eating and drinking is recommended. Rati pim jo masa paung khawe sadharma sang inke adakama kamata nartu kapawe. So we recognize within discipline, big is fine, and unfortunately, majority of Nihangs don't take it disciplined. But otherwise, out of discipline, nartu kapawe. You will suffer greatly. And because of my physical training, like I said, I train up to 3 to 4 hours a day. Like, okay, I'm in my age called, I'm 54 now. I can still do my hour down the bed every day. And these young men here, they'll vouch for them. I can whoop them every day in exercising and physically as well. Like, so training is very important, and you can't do that if you are or drugged up and so on. But we are not teetotalers. We're not vegetarians. And for a long time among the Sikhs here, is the fact that they were accusing me of promoting drug taking and promoting meat eating. And later on, at the beginning, because they were hostile to everything Sanatan, Hindu, and so on, I introduced the Vidya Chatka Gatka. Chatka, for simple reason, is connected to Devi worship, single blow, kills and so on. And then eventually, when I got my little group, when I got my people with me, they said a Punjabi saying, "Pair rakhan di jagah mil jawe, to baith hi aap jana." So in midst all this hostility, I managed to get my foothold, and then I got a place to sit. And I have gathered a very good, loyal group. And this group it's not a cult, as the fanatics trying to accuse me. All my individuals who are with the Akhara, they're educated, they work in they run their own businesses, they work in schools, and they're doctors, engineers, and so on. And the Akhara that thinks for themselves, like they support this Vidya because they understand what he represents and so on. And as a consequence, like I said, certain people who are promoting vegetarianism, anti-teetotalism, people who are promoting a political agenda. So all these individuals became hostile to me. And of course, when you shake the status quo in any kind of scenario, could be anything, there's only people who are conservative and they feel threatened by it. But I'll be honest with you, over the years, many people who were hostile to me have come very friendly now as well. Like, they haven't bothered, like. And their last biggest attempt to tear me down was in 2008, when I brought out a Yusuf book with Pandit. And even then, it's because in that final chapter of that book, we listed all the corruption, how much hundreds of millions of money has been basically poured into it, and where's it all gone, we asked. We actually wrote about the plight of those 200 or so Sikh households which were dragged out. At gunpoint, the men were dragged out at gunpoint, thrown in prison, the women beaten up and taken out, and their houses bulldozed. Because we wrote all that, faction of the Gurdwara committee, headed by Prasishcha, and of course the state governor of Maharashtra, these lot, they did not want that coming in the book, and so on. And then there's the other faction is whose houses have been destroyed. Okay? And so when I put that history in the book, or Parmjit and me put it in the book as such, there was elements who were not happy with us. That we have basically spoken about this destruction of the heritage, how the Ramgadiya Bunga was destroyed, how all these ancient Bungas and everything was destroyed in the name of what's called renovation or whatever, modernization, etc. All this heritage has been destroyed. And then how many Sikhs households have been basically uprooted and so on. And as a consequence, that group was not happy. And then into the pot, to stir it all up, certain individuals belonging to, I would say, Taksal kind of affiliates from UK, they were there, you said, and of course, then they stirred it up. Because majority of the Sikhs, they can't read a book in English. And they took one little caption, accused me of insulting the Jethedar, because the Jethedar himself did not stand up to the committee, which is true. But that thing got stirred up, then a video was made, and the actual video is about 9 hours or something long, because we sat there, we talked through it and so on, and they threatened with violence. I could have easily summoned those 200 or so guys who were hostile to that group, but we're looking at 10 Sala Guru Ka. And the last thing I want to do was, because all those Sikhs are related to each other, family, like, and even if they did fight, they'll blame the outsider. That'll be me and others, and then people with me. I didn't want to get hurt. So at the end of the day, we decided when the Jethedar came to us and said, "Look, this is not gonna. He wants to go to sleep, and this is disrupting everything. Just make a so-called apology and so on, and just pacify them and go into that scene." Okay. And with the intention of not disrupting the Ten Sala, we did that. Okay, sometimes you have to be a kachukama turtle, and you cannot outrun the fire. You have to basically retract and sit there and let things pass over. But that book is still selling. It's sold out well, as you said. They're now asking for a second volume coming up. That was the last time the argument came. So over the years now, I have basically left England. So I am not actually residing in any country. I'm a proper Chakravarti. I live, before the pandemic came in, I was staying 2 weeks at a time in different countries and so on. And with the app coming out now, the access will be given global, like to everybody to learn the Vidya and so on. So the Vidya is growing. And let me answer the RSS thing as well, like, because I'm not scared to answer questions, like, okay? So, like I said, in 94, when I started the Akhara, I got trouble with police, okay? So when I went back to India, what years now? 21, so it'd be 19, I think, or 18, I can't remember, but 3-4 years ago. I have to make sure that there's not going to be any issues. Okay, so I met with the AAP party who actually ruled Delhi. So I met them and I explained to them, look, this is who I am, what I do, and I'm going to be teaching in Delhi. Like the rest of India doesn't really bother. I went to Bangalore, went to Bombay. No one really cares about that. But in Delhi, it's a special case. Okay, there are a bit more crazy people there, like especially politicians. So in Delhi, I met with the AAP party. And our party is the one who runs the show in Delhi, municipal and so on. And last thing I wanted was to start something up, and then some policeman come over and just stop me and so on. But so I got the assurances from our party that I said, look, all I'm doing is promoting dharma. In the name of Sabatta Pala, I'm presenting Kshatriya Vidya. And of course, the Vidya appeals to the Hindus because it is Sanatan Vidya. Like so. I was well received by our party, but the central Indian government is run by BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, okay? And they are the affiliates of the RSS. So I also went and gave them a tactical nod as well. Like I met them, same as I did our party, like I met them, and I said, look, I'm going to be in India teaching this, Vidya, and you ask me, who do I teach? I don't teach criminals. I won't teach a bunch of racists and so on, fundamentalist types and so on, whether it's Sikh or Hindu, anybody. But I would teach children how to protect themselves. I would teach girls how to defend themselves and so on. And the young men I would teach. And this way, by teaching Shastar Vidya, I can also expose them to Gurmat as well, okay, directly and indirectly. So many people who come to Shastar Vidya, they're not necessarily converted. So I'm not in the game of converting people because in our belief is Sikhi is karmadi. Why Guru wants you, he'll have you. Like otherwise, it's fine like where you are. So as a consequence, many people are getting exposed to Gurmat and Sikhi and so on. Once you read my books, you'll see how much Gurmat there is in there. You see history and so on, and the philosophy, Gurbani, and such. And I gave a tactical note to the RSS. And then when I came back to England, and where responded advised me not to mention the RSS because Sikhs would just jump up and down. I don't like to hide things. Okay, I made it quite clear in the newsletter, which inevitably will get out, I know that 100%. And I explain to my students, like I do every year, what I'm doing. After all, they are financing me. They need to know what I'm doing. So I explained to what I'm doing, and I said in the same letter it says, I met the AAP party, I met the RSS guys, and as a consequence, I got a tactical nod, because in India, in Punjab, or anywhere in India, you go to a pen or a town to start something. Unlike here, the authorities are fine. You stay within the law, and the authorities won't bother you. In India, it is very different. You have to go in, and whoever's in charge, you have to basically tactically acknowledge him, that you acknowledge his authority. Okay? And as a consequence, then they feel respected. In England, if a politician comes, he has to come by bus or train. In India, if a politician comes, he fucking stops the whole fucking airline from flying, stops all the roads and fucking, and he may be a little chaparasi or whatever, not much of a fucking officer, but their culture is different that way. And that's all I did. In the newsletter, I presented that. And as a course, when you have people who are blinkered, they only see, so they saw, in the letter it says, I met with our party, I met with the RSS guys, just to ensure that there'll be no issues when I start teaching in India. But of course, who are my detractors, they just going to look at RSS. They don't care about the rest of all the context stuff and so on. So giving a tactical nod is not getting in bed with them, you see that? So at the moment, recently in India, I have Sikh schools who approached me. They want me to teach the Vidya in Sikh schools. Some of the RSS schools have also approached me. Arya Samaj schools approached me. And Ramgadiya schools and other schools have approached me. Even Muslims approach me because I teach, because I'm a martial artist, so I can teach. And every child, every person needs to know how to do self-defense and so on. But if they want to carry on with the higher Vidya, then of course we get to Gurmat and so on as well, history, philosophy, etc. and so on. And the smart ones amongst the people in the world, they don't have issues with that. I can study history of the knights of Europe, and doesn't mean I have to become a knight. Okay, I can read the Quran, doesn't mean I have to become Muslim. I can read the Bhagavad Gita, I don't have to become a whatever. I'm personally, individually, I'm a Guru Sikh. That's how I see myself. And Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh to the Gesi Samara is what we do at last every day. And for my students, some are Christians, some are not Christians, some are Muslims, some are not, some are atheists, some are theists, some are gays, some are straight, some are just downright weird. But that's the way they are like. And they're nice people though. That's the only thing, that they don't harm anybody, don't harm themselves. That's the way out. So the RSS question is just me being tactical in India. Like, if you ever live in India, you'll realize even every politician is, you'll have one brother who's RSS, one brother who's Kali, one brother who's BJP, one brother who's Congress, one brother this. India is a mess like that. And you got to know how to navigate, not just politics, but caste as well. Like, not politics, caste, even religions and so on. You have to navigate and so on. So it's a complex thing. And so far I've been successful. I have not managed to offend anybody. And I have had no trouble with the law there. The Vidya it is now growing and growing and growing and so on. So my linking with the RSS, like I'll make a blanket statement now. The RSS is a right-wing Hindu party. There's no question about that. Okay, their origins are with Hitler and his Mein Kampf and so on. They're not right-wing in the sense of the Nazis, because it's a peculiar India thing and so on. And over the years, they tried to conceal this and hide this and so on. But they are right-wing, just like you get right-wing parties in England and so on. And there's others who are left-wing, some are central-wing and so on. I just don't. I'm not a politician, like, okay? If they haven't broken the law, they're not harming anybody or themselves and so on. And if I see them as genuine, I would teach the Vidya. How much I teach and what the competencies I cannot say, like, until I get to know them and so on. But like I said, I am not RSS. Okay? I am, like I said, I'm not affiliated with any Burdal or Tarna. I'm a Burdal Nihang. I accept that. My heritage is Burdal, Nihangs. But with the present day Nihangs in India, after Baba Santa Singh, when Baba Santa Singh honored me with Srupe and so on, I had a very close relationship with Baba Santa Singh. I could bring him up and talk to him when I wanted to. And when I went there, had access to everything in Burdal, all these archives and everything which I've digitized and so on. But afterwards, with Sajid Singh and Gurdev Singh and Sajid and Kuba Prem Singh and all the rest, their infighting is so much that, I don't wish them harm, I wish them well, but I don't want to be involved with that. I'm impartial to that. I don't link myself directly with them. Otherwise, if you've seen my documentaries, like on the Chakra documentary, you see that I link with all the Nihangs. So all these stupid accusations that the Nihangs in India don't like me is about non-sickles effort. You can't get 3 or 4 Nihangs dishing me because I did exclude them from my documentary and ignore the fact that all the hundreds of Nihangs of Tarna Dal and Buddha Dal faulting me when I made the Chakra documentary and my books as well. Okay, so this is all I have to say. I am not RSS.
No, thank you. I to be honest, I was pretty certain that the accusations were nothing but that. But it's always good to get an answer from the horse's mouth.
I mean, think about it. There's a Punjabi saying, like my books have come out. Now, you mentioned one book is The Master's Presence, but there's another book called Pakyan Chitra Instructions Regarding Deceptive Character, which I brought out. Is the first 50 tales of Chitra Pakyan with a very extensive intro and preface, which deals with Pakyan Chitra, which is the most controversial text in Sikhi. And that was out on the Amazon. We're taking it down at the moment because we're going to bring out the other 5 books. And I'm bringing a full translation of Pakyan Chitra out, hopefully by January as well. And the first one also has images in there. None of my written works, which have come out, whether it's which I have written, like Pakyan Chitra, or with Paramjit, like the history, or I contribute to, like in the Masters, in the Warrior Saints and so on, literature they cannot confront. I will say to my detractors, when we look at the books we write, look at all the evidence in there, and just do a counter book to that. And if you want to talk to me, present the arguments properly. Don't go by hearsay and scaremongering and so on. This is not befitting a Sikh. Like I said, Koji, Khoj Karde. Like search for knowledge. Badi baad karte chagde. They argue, just argue. So empty vessels usually make the most noise. Or as they say in Punjabi, it's called Anna Kutta Havanu Ponke, like the blind dog barks in the wind. And it is Shastar Vidya and its history is not revisionist, okay? But like I said, I'm not hostile to revisionist Sikhs either, like, because Sikhism took us, I study Sikhism. Sikhism has taken different turns throughout history and so on, and we just got to understand that. Most of the Sikhs even say, if you sit me down with, say, a KJ, okay, or from, say, Chok Mehta, I don't say Damdam Diksar, because Damdam Diksar doesn't exist in history. Like, if you sit me down with them, 95% things we will agree on. Most Sikhs in our Panth will agree upon 95% of things. Okay? It's little 5 things, whether it's diet or way of dressing and so on, or certain rituals we have to do. Those are but those 5, but the question is, if you can agree on 95% of things, is it wise to argue over 5%?
I have to say, you amongst a number of people have actually been quite pivotal in my personal journey, because I remember attending a lecture, I think, at Warwick Arts Centre, where you were discussing Sikh battle tactics, and you were describing how they'd cut the heads off and then kick them back to count how many people they killed. And I remember, like, it's still stuck in my head, I don't know what, like 10, 15 years after the event. And I think for me, it was the first exposure to like a real Sikh history. Just to add to that, I've read In the Master's Presence, and I think it's a brilliant book. It's one of the, again, another book that was influential in me doing a history degree and wanting to look at Sikh history.
I think also, like, over the years, irrespective of the what's called accusations, and in the past I've also received threats. We're talking about nearly 84 death threats and all this nonsense and so on. At one point they even threatened my children one time as well, which I dealt with. I went to the guys, confronted him head on. And so this is not, like I said, this is not Sikhi and so on. At the end, let a person's achievements, look at the person's achievements. So I've taken the Sikh martial art, a martial art was Sanatan ancestors, which I go back from Kshatriya time and so on. I've taken this art now. In the last years, I have been off the scene in the UK for a good while. I have not done many talks or podcasts and so on, and videos and so on. For a simple reason, I am busy presenting the art to top-ranking martial artists and so on. I have people now studying under me who have been involved in martial arts for 40-odd years and so on, who have backgrounds in all forms of traditional martial arts in the world, to modern-day martial MMA and so on. And just to present and show the efficacy of what I teach, like. So when you get people like someone like, say, in Damon Evans is in America, like, and he's been doing martial arts for nearly 30-odd years, and he teaches all forms of Filipino martial arts, Salat, and Indonesian martial arts, MMA, boxing, and so on, everything from 54 prison blocks and praying mats. And when someone like him says that of all martial arts, and his main martial is Jeet Kune Do, so it's the Bruce Lee one, which believes in that, taking the essence of each martial art and then bringing it together to work for you. For him to say things like, all martial arts have commonality in terms of pushing with the legs, turning with the hips. But he says now, the last 5 years, I've been studying Shastar Vidya, and from his very basics, this martial art is completely unique. Sikhi is Nyari. It's very distinct. And our martial traditions are very distinct as well, like in terms of body mechanics, executional techniques, and so on. And they're very in-depth. And the last, like I said, since 2007, I have been presenting in a world stage and so on. So world stage in terms of presenting it, teaching it, accepting challenges, etc., and so on and so on. Made a lot of friends and so on. Not having made a single enemy amongst the martial artists and so on. And it was because of the martial artists that are backing me that I have been able to go around the world and so on. They vouch for me. So we're putting Sikhi on the map in terms of Shastar Vidya is a unique way of presenting Sikh. Well, it's the best way to preserve Sikh martial heritage. Look at our children in schools here. They get there's a video a couple of months ago, I think I seen when I was in Germany, of seeing a young lad getting his bug taken off him, his gaze pulled and all this and so on. And there are many things now who children are scared to keep Panchakar and Dadi and Dudi and so on. There are many parents who keep their gaze Dadi for their kids, and then when they come to about 15, 16, just let them cut it all off, and that's it, don't care. Like, so the Gursroop of Sikhi, like if you look at the percentage of Amataris, Kesataris in the Sikh Panth to say non-Kesataris, Saitaris, the number is very low, like it's like 5-6% compared to everybody else. And everybody who learns with me eventually, like Umar Sikhs, they feel the pride. I have a lot of money who learn with me. I never forced anybody to take Amrit. I wasn't forced. Someone wants to do Amrit, like says, oh, Karmadi. But they all have a healthy respect for the case and the Dadi and the Pani Kakar and Sikhi, Gurmat. Because we teach also in terms of meditation, how to do jap properly, according to ancient texts. Not according to my experience, but how I was told by Gurdev and how we cite from ancient texts. So there's Nam Jap in there. There's a whole Sanskrit of Brahma, martial yoga in there. There's history there. There's tradition there. So all this is enshrined in the Vidya. Like Vidya is just part of it, in fact. And as a consequence, like I said, we want to preserve Khalsa. We want to preserve the Khalsa and the Khalsa Swarup and the Roop into posterity. Shastar Vidya. There's a reason why Guru Gobind Singh insisted that all his Sanghs study Shabd and Shastar Vidya. Okay, because without Shastar Vidya, you cannot be a Sangh like. And you can study karate, judo, kung fu, or maji karo. There's nothing wrong with any kind of Vidya, but there is not Gurmat there. Gurmat is with the actual Vidya itself, and so on. And then when we teach Gurmat in the Khadas you will know, we always cite from Dasam Sablo Granth and so on. We talk about Shed Drishti, Kuka Drishti, from the ancient Supraka texts and so on. So I would say to the Sikhs out there, like, step forward and preserve your Shastar Vidya. And those people who are scared about RSS, think like this. I am getting now lots of Hindus who are coming to me to learn. Like, last thing you guys who are scared of the Hindus want is that they have the Vidya and you Punjabis are sitting on your ass like, the Vidya goes bad. Like, I have Gore, I have Kale now teaching this Vidya around the world. Like, okay, I have Sanghs as well, of course. But just, we Sikhs need to preserve our culture and our history. Like, our children need to have pride in their ancestors and what they did. Our ancestors, with Sikhi ke Sanal, sacrificed so much to bring us where we are now. Okay, our first generation, like our parents' generation, when they came to England, they worked in the factories and all this, and they have now given us up. Now most of our Punjabi brothers and Sikhs and so on, most of them got jobs. They're educated like you are. You went to university, you got this, and most of our Sikhs are doing very well now here in the material world and so on. But they say within 2-3 generations, immigrant community can lose its whole culture now. So people like myself, like I'm preserving it from Shastar side and the history side as well. And people like Pamjit, who was my first student, Pamjit Iqbal. So Pamjit, a point came where he no longer practiced Shastar there, but he supports me thoroughly. And he's more digging into libraries and the books. And you see what beautiful stuff Kashi Has is doing, like Pamjit, Aman, and so on. And you already had Devinder on your and look at the wonderful talks and weapon collections he's doing. So the Khada has branched off in many ways. So we have many of our students, former students with links. Some are collecting weapons, some are doing history, some are doing this, and some doing that. And that is wonderful to see, like, that we Sikhs should preserve every facet of Sikhi we can, like, from the spiritual dimension, Nam Jap and so on, from the historical dimension, from the martial arts dimension. Myself, I can appreciate Kirtan. I suppose we had it called... Kashi had a boat called the Marasis and so on, the Rubabis from Pakistan to England one time. But I myself, I can't perform Kirtan. But there are Sikhs out there who are trying to preserve the Kirtan tradition. So Katha, Kirtan, Shastar Vidya, these are 3 Vidyas of the Panth. We Sikhs should go out of our way to preserve them any way we can. If you can't physically do them, then financially support Kirtan and Katha and so on. But be careful of Junjagyanis. I'll give you a warning. Junjagyani is a person who gets a bit of knowledge and then sets themselves a Gurdev, Guru, whatever, and start teaching. False gurus, jhuthe. Kache gurte mukta na paiye, he says. If you have a kacha guru who has no real knowledge, you won't attain a mukti. Like. So we have to be discerning that where that is gurmat, and we're not being led astray and so on. Okay, so don't be led by genuine passion. Use your brain and then help us. We should all, as Sikhs, I'm doing this. For me, this is Seva, like Shastar Vidya Seva. There's a message at the end I want to give to Sikhs. Sikhis ke saan naal, and we should do our darnest, our utmost to preserve it in every way, because in 3 generations so, in the UK, in most diaspora, it's going to be lost. And if you go to Punjab now, it's so sickening and so disheartening that Sikhi there is dying as well. Okay, the depth of knowledge of Sikhi is very shallow there. And in fact, I have met a number of Singhs. I was speaking to a guy recently, a young Nihang lad in his 20s, who was all Nihang in England. He went and lived with the Nihang Dals, came so disheartened, came over here, cut all his case, Dadi Epping up. and so on. And so we need to preserve the essence of Sikhi. Like that's why eventually I will go back to India and start promoting this Vidya as well there at the stage. And at the moment, I'm doing the global thing, and then eventually we'll go there as well. Rather than Sikhs, preserve Sikhi if you can, any way you can.
Just the last couple of questions then that I just wanted to get your input on. So one of the questions that got sent in was, how do you ensure, or how does the Akhara ensure that the martial art taught is Shastar Vidya, as in are other martial arts incorporated in other styles, or is this entirely Shastar Vidya, Khalsa Yudh Vidya?
So what I teach is a Kshatriya Vidya from the Kshatriya. So for instance, one of the key principles of locomotion, like moving in the Vidya, we don't push off the ground, we don't use hips. So we move by spilling our body mass, head of our central of gravity with our shoulders. So we have a text like the Agni Puran, which is a text written between the 9th and 11th century, which speaks about Kandega. Kanda means shoulder blade. Then we have in Sui Prakash, which is a text written around 1846 that talks about Pai and Sagande Saath. When I teach, this is the big thing, when I teach, I have to vouch for everything, like the sheer body mechanics. You're going to listen to when my books come out, or just go, you will see the interviews given by other martial artists. The Vidya is completely distinct. So the way the Chinese move, or the Japanese move, or the Filipinos, Indonesians, from the way we hold our stick, from the way we would generate our locomotion, the whole body mechanic, it is unique. And I can vouch for this. So when I talk about Lapt or Chap, or Lap or Fandana, all these are terms found in Dasam and Sablo Granth. And when I talk about Dhai, to surge ahead, to move quicker than... So yesterday I was teaching a technique, how to cover 15 feet with a chap and a thigh before the person can even strike. Okay, so I have a person standing 15 feet away from me, and I'll tell him that as soon as he sees me to launch, as soon as he registers me moving to advancing towards him, strike an empty air if you can. To cover that ground with Lap Chapt. Okay, yeah, and you'll find this represents like a Lapak Singh Thai. You'll find in ancient texts and so on. That's why in my books, I've given all the citations from Dasam Sablo Granth, Naveen Panpar, Skuparkars, Gurbala Shevi, etc. I've given also, is a book in English, but also where there's terminology, I've given it Gurmukhi as well, so that people can understand that it's there. The Vidya I teach, okay, I make, this is the biggest thing, it is not in any way, it is too mechanically, body mechanical-wise in every way, is completely distinct from the way we hold the weapons, the way we wield the weapons, the way we move. For instance, we don't turn our hips in Kshatriya. All of the martial arts, they turn their hips. So we can turn from left to right without turning our hips. When I sink, I don't sink with my knees. I can sink without bending my knees and so on. And all locomotion is done in a particular way. We generate Gati Shakti, kinetic energy, Akarshan Shakti, and so on. And there's a lot of terminologies you'll find in. So when Guru Gobind Singh talks about Samit, okay, Biran Kol Mare. Samitana means is a particular way of connecting the chakras, aligning the core muscles, thinking and relaxing. All this is unique. And a lot of advanced martial artists, like I had one martial artist who was like a 12th dan in ninjutsu of Hatsumi. And when he saw what I was doing, he goes to me, we call this the void within the void, because it's creating space within space. I said, we say, Antar Shunne, Bar Shunne, Atra Brahman Shunne, Shunne, Chota Shunne, Jante, Papanapun. That's Guru Nanak Dev Ji, okay? When people talk about Bruce Lee, he talks about being like water. And when they say be like water, then Guru Gobind Singh says, Jim Baran ko bar mare hot linte mansandare. So when we strike water, the first water merges with the water, and he becomes merged as one. The higher concepts of higher martial arts we find in the Sikh Shastar Vidya. But like I said, when our books come out, I've spent last 10 years collecting. I've been presenting martial arts. I mean, it's easy for me to blow my own trumpet, like. And that's why at the beginning, I never revealed my lineage. I didn't mention nothing. I just did it. So if they can beat me, then obviously I can't. Then they can no need to learn from me. So I've now presented the art and to martial artists throughout and so on, the world and so on. And it's a combat martial art. Don't compare this to MMA and so on. Okay, because MMA is a sport at the end of the day, and everything we do, what we do, be illegal in what they do and so on. And it is not confined to, it's called Shastar Vidya. So basically we have 10 styles of unarmed combat and so on, which deals in neck. So in Sikh history, they speak of Gardan Tor Pehlwan, neck-breaking champions. The Vidya ends in neck breaking. The Vidya is to do with chatka and patka. Chatka means to kill instantaneously. Patka means to incapacitate. The Vidya is for protecting oneself, one's family, one's community, society, and above all, promoting dharma. And so it's not a sport. Like Gurdev would say, "A Vidya, khed nahi hegi, Shastar khadone nahi hege." So the Vidya is not a game. The Shastar are not toys. Your city set that you wear, it's not a toy. And we sayings are not bache that play, okay? So it's a way of life, and it is practical. So I've been teaching from soldiers to people from the FBI, correctional officers and so on, army soldiers, etc. So the Vidya is a very practical Vidya, but it is unique. So you can come and experience it, but if you are apprehensive coming to me because I might contaminate you, whatever, my books are coming out. Read my books, okay? Then the app is coming out, and the app, you can you can check the Vidya out in terms of what is presented. In the app is bronze app, which will give all the videos and stuff which are advertising the Vidya. But then the silver section, which for a small fee you can learn from. So there you can see what the science is. How can I lift my foot without lifting my foot? Okay, I can have, when in the Ramayana, there's a story of Ang putting his foot down and challenging the Rakish to come and lift the foot off the ground if they can. So the science behind this is to sink your body mass into the foot so no one can lift it. So when I go amongst the Hindus in India, I do those things. I say, look, I'm going to put my foot down just like Ang did in Ramayana, and I'll tell you how I do it afterwards. But first, see if you can lift the foot, because I can sink my weight into it. So when they see things like this, and when I'm teaching about Skandegat, moving the shoulders, and they read in the Agni Puran, when I'm speaking about Akarshan Shakti, and you find that in the Agni Puran as well, ancient texts vouch for, when I talk about Stanu, it's mentioned in the Vedas and so on, and when I speak about Pashupat, it's mentioned Sabdo Granth and so on. So these texts, which are neglected by Sikhs anyway, so whatever I teach, I vouch for. So when I teach with a stick, how long should a stick be like? There are boles we have in the Akhada. सब स्लोत राखिए सवा हाथ प्रमाण पूरे सतगुरु भेजे दे के बड़ा तान दे लेके बड़ा तान बैरी के सिर पर जाओ कहो गुरु गोबिंद सिंह पढ़ मंत्र श्री वाहिगुरु 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 allow. Now that says the sabak slot, the instructional stick should be sava hath long. Okay, so when I sing bole like that, but I sing sadara kase kama kasa, this is how the attitude of saying should be. But I sing sadara kase kamar kasa para surum sara mukulla tara ture chati taan kar much krai bata de hath rakhe mota sota sota khadgaye lange dusal lagare mar sota mora je dusal lagare dusal puchare aisa she rubiya nambi amriya pradan sing ganiye. So these are ancient boles which are now forgotten by Nihangs in general. And when I was given this task by Baba Santa Singh to write the Burda history, don't forget, Burda history has never been written before. And we have now produced 9 volumes of it with 100 images each. So it's a very large volume dealing with all aspects of Sikh history and everything that's sort of missing in there. We just put everything in there so everybody knows what's in there. So this will eventually come out. Like I said, this book has been over 20, 30 years in the making and so on. But we are nearly there now. Those Sikhs who say, oh, we want to do karate, judo, kung fu, Japanese art, you could do what you want. There's nothing wrong with that. You can read the Bible, the Quran, whatever you want. Knowledge is knowledge. But Shastar Vidya, this is a kardi cheez, and we can preserve this. I have many students now who just come to seminars and they are mixing it with kung fu, karate, and so on out there because he makes their kung fu karate work better. But in the core of the Akhada, we're keeping the Vidya because it's Gurmat. We are keeping it pure as possible. So when I teach, there's no allowed or malowed. Our principles of fighting on the ground, in the waters, everything else, I will back up from history. When you read my books, you'll see how much backing there is. So this is like Baba Ram Singh and old Baba Nihang asking this word. Okay, Baba Ji, is Vidya jo koi malowed hai? Is there any kind of alternate mixture from foreign sources in this Vidya? And he made it quite clear that a Vidya, taksila to only, Pratan Vidya, which koi malowed taksila, and there's no adulteration in this. I'm not saying this from a Hankar point of view. That's just what it is. But anyway, the Vidya is like this. That it is a pure Vidya of our Kshatriya. It's not a Sikh. Sikhs are the latest because for them, the Vidya is a Kshatriya Vidya. And that's how Guru Gobind Singh created it. Guru Gobind Singh said, Kal Apashak Kshatriya Dharma Apayo. I will create a Akalpurk with Kshatriya Dharma. This Sant Spy that you get nowadays is this Sant Spy notion onward Christian shoulders, like when the saints go marching on, is British Raj period. We are not Sants, we are Kshatriya. So Guru Gobind Singh always says that. Kshatriya Supat Sundar Lage, Sirpag Si Spag Band, Sirke Si Spag Band, Sirpag Bande Lag. So the Kshatriya Swarup is the beautiful form of Kshatriya. And how is that form? Okay. Sirke Si Spag Bande. So we have a long case and we have a Pagmanas. So we are Kshatriya and the Vidya is Kshatriya. And this is how I connect with the Hindus in India because they are all descending from the warriors are Kshatriya. And we can connect. Guru Gobind Singh's mission in the world was to create a Kshatriya Panth of warriors, of Sajjan Sure. Okay, so Sajjan Sure is Gair Gambira, like of deep, profound thinking. Gair Gambira, Guni Gihira, of great virtue. Gair Gambira, Guni Gihira, Sajjan Sura, like a noble warrior. Sab Log, masterful. Dvaitamar, so killing all sensuality. Jape Kalaka, Sabka, Mahaka, Vaheguru. Okay, so these are the mantras. We have 6 mantras as opposed. So that's the type of Sikh that the Akhara wants to produce and so on. And like I said, and this kind of universal teaching of this appeals to, like I said, I have students from all walks. Even in Saudi Arabia, they want me to teach there as well. Like, so I'm going, the Vidya, like Gurmat can go anywhere in the world. Like it's universal, like. So the Vidya is the same way as well. And with that, and I'm not compromising it, I'm not twisting it, I'm not changing it. Guru Gobind Singh's message or teachings are universal teachings. I wouldn't even say it's their teaching. It's Adsat, Jagasat, Hevisat, Nankunsat. It's from the very beginning of time. Like. It's the essence of truth. It's Gurmat.
Okay, well, just 2 questions off the back of that is a lot of people were asking, when is Master's Presence Volume 2 going to come out?
Okay, so that is, you got to ask that question to Paramjit. Okay, it is written up, is written up, and it is done. And at the moment, it's just the logistics, I think, as far as I know. Like, so that world is not my world. That's Paramjit's world. Okay. When you have him, you talk to him.
No, I will. I will definitely. And then the second question is, what are your opinions of Gatka? Because I first came to your lessons after basically learning Gatka for 6, 7, 8 years. And to be fair, I was also learning karate at the same time. And I've been in a number of fights and Gatka was of 0 use. So I would love to get to know your...
Okay, let's look at Gatka. Okay, so the word Gatka is derived from the word Khatka. Khatka is derived from Kutka. And Kutka is come from the word Kut. So the word Kut comes from somewhere around Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan, okay? So when the Turks invaded, so when the Turks mean people of Turkic origin, from Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, when they invaded India, North India in about the 10th century, it was their art that's Gatka. So the Turks, because the Turks are of Mongol descent, okay? And they're fierce warriors, but their method of fighting is different to what the Hindu Kshatriyas are doing. So the Turkic method is this, that they would basically ride in on their horses. They'll thin the enemy out with their archery and then sweep through the weakened enemy with their lances and then basically jump off their horses. And then they, with their swords, will basically, on a group, surround the enemy and the person on the blind side will cut them down. So the Mongols, they trace their origins, the Turkic people, who are the Mongols are the original ones, they trace their origins back to that they're descending from wolves. So if you ever see a wolf attack, the wolf, they work in a pack, they will single out a weak animal from a particular herd, and then they will give it in relays. They chase it down, they surround it, they will hamstring it, they disembowel it, and they bring it down, and they eat it. So Gatka is that kind of mentality. It's a wolf pack mentality, and so on. So the original Gatka was that, where Shastar Vidya is with the other Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas saw themselves as Sengs, as tigers, and so on. So imagine this: in the Indian jungles, you have dogs, wild dogs called dhole. And the dholes, when they surround a tiger will be surrounded, but tiger can pounce. And the tiger will seek to annihilate the alpha male amongst the dhole. And the dholes will seek to surround the tiger, while the ones in front will distract, and the others will basically try to nip away at his heels or hamstring him particularly, and so on. So the two tactics are very different. So when the Rajputs confronted the Turks, they aimed with elephants and infantry, fight and clash head-on battles like they did in the chess. But when the Turks came, they did not give the Rajputs the battles they wanted. They used the more mobile warfare, which is running around them, shooting arrows, and so on and so on. And so the Gatka is of Turkic origins, and Shastar Vidya is of Kshatriya origins. So Gatka is basically fighting with a sword, stick, and shield, or sword and shield only, where Shastar Vidya is a whole science which incorporates Bahayud. Okay, Shastar Vidya and Ashtar Vidya, various types and so on. So it's a complete science in that way. One is Shastar Vidya is the science of battle of sedentary forces and it's called sedentary cultures, whereas Gatka is from the nomadic cultures and so on, whose main weapon was actually the horseback archery and lance, not the sword and stuff. So when the Turks took over northern India, when they settled and so on, Gatka, because you've done this for so long, I mean, tell me honestly, how long did it take you to learn what you learned in Gatka? Like, couple of years, couple of months, couple of weeks?
Nah, a couple of months to learn everything, and then it was just years of doing the same thing over and over again.
Okay. And then you were a child as well, like 10-year-old. And as a 10-year-old, you learned to do something within a couple of months. And an adult can learn within a few days what they teach, like, and so on. And where Shastar Vidya is, as you try to learn, how different is Shastar Vidya in your period?
Completely different. I remember the first lesson the first few lessons, you basically taught us how to walk.
Yeah. So we teach you how to walk, we teach you how to sit, we teach you how to do everything, because we're teaching you about body mechanics. And Shastar Vidya is all muscular, Gatka is all muscular, where Shastar Vidya is, so Vani says, jab you said, Suniye Jog Dhan Ka Bhed. Suniye Jog Dhan Ka Bhed. So by listening to Guruji, by listening to Gurmat, you will attain the bhed, the secrets of Dhan and yoga. Okay? So you say, what's the secret of the yoga like? What's the secret of what's called of body? And let me tell you this, Guru Nanak Ji, according to Bhagavad Gita, Guru Nanak Ji practiced a particular form of yoga called Chikitsa yoga. Okay, Chikitsa nowadays means like a doctor or surgeon. It means a healing yoga. And Chikitsa yoga in the martial times of Guru Hargobind came to know Sanjay Puriya Briam, like Bhai Gada says, Sudbi Briam Kamaine. So we teach you, like when we're teaching you walking, I was basically teaching you body mechanics. Okay? Whereas Gatka doesn't have that. They work with whatever you got, like, as a consequence. So one is a very sophisticated science, and one is a crude art, but it is successful in the battlefield. Gatka was because Gatka is used in a particular tactical mindset. So, like the Turks, like I said, they ride with their horses, they shoot their arrows, then they thin the field with their lances, and then the stragglers, 10 of them will just pounce on them like a pack of wolves. And then the one on the blind side, as the others distract him, will cut him down. So that one, it works 100%. Gatka is very easy to learn, okay? And so in India, in ancient past, you had the Kshatriya Vidyas, which were classical arts, like classical music is. And then the village arts, you had like Pattebaji and Plattebaji and Lakadbaji. And when Gatka came, Gatka sort of mingled with the Pattabaji, Lakadbaji, and so on. Only later in times when the Rajputs and in times of Akbar and the Mughals sort of joined together basically to rule together basically, that's when they started doing Shastar Vidya as well. Then you had it called, in the courts of the Mughals, they began to study Kathak dancing. They started to call, then Shastar Vidya went to be learned as well by them. And then in times of Akbar and so on, we have the concept of Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb, the merging of the Gandhis and Jamuna together to mean that the Indo-Persian Islam that came with the Mughals and the Hindustani Sanatan Dharma, they mixed together. That's why if you take a Muslim from India now, from Lucknow somewhere, and you put him in Pakistan, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It'd be the same like. And same with Pakistani. You put a Pakistani in Agra or somewhere, he'll be Indian. But if you take a Pakistani or an Indian Muslim and put him in, say, Iran somewhere, he'll stick out like a sore thumb. Because when it comes to the Indian subcontinent, we are the same culture, really, and so on, ethnicity-wise, and all our clothing, and so on, apart from our religions. But even in Punjab, it's much so, like even like Baba Sheikh Farid is the most popular saint of the Muslims. And but Baba Sheikh Farid is also revered by Hindus and Sikhs as well. Like, so philosophically as well, like the Islam of Pakistan with the Sufis is almost exactly the same as us. Okay, we Abdul Mande, Abdul Mande, and the philosophy is the same. Like, so at the end of the day, so Gatka is not indigenous to India. Gatka is a crude art compared to Shastar Vidya, and because it's part of a nomadic culture, and whereas when you have a sedentary culture, they can refine the arts a lot more. Whereas in the nomadic culture, it was traveling and so on. Gatka in a particular context can work, but obviously, the Gatka you are learning is more for exhibition now. So they're not making it practical use like. So even in Pakistan, they have Katka, Kutka. I mean, I have been told by my Gurdev, the original Gatka as well, like, because we need to know what we're fighting as well. So Shastar Vidya is Kshatriya Vidya, Gatka is Turkic Vidya. So Turk Pai practices Gatka, a Singh Kshatriya practices Shastar Vidya. And like I said, is in a particular context, if Gatka can be utilized. And in the past, villages in Punjab, Sikhs and Hindus did learn Gatka to, if nothing else. There's a beautiful quote by a Jat called, what's his name? There's a particular text by a Jat telling about his village history and so on. It's in my book anyway, I can't remember what it's called. And he says, in our village, all the boys were trained in horsemanship and Shastar Vidya, and if nothing else, minimum Gatka. So we talk about minimum. Gatka is minimum because it's so easy to learn. So the basic blocks and the basic strikes. No body mechanics. That's what makes Shastar Vidya different. And when Guru Gobind Singh taught, Guru Gobind Singh knew that Guru Hargobind knew that our warriors, we are outnumbered in Punjab 3-1 by the Muslims. Okay? And Guru Gobind Singh wanted to make sure that we can handle 3-1 at least. And so Guru Gobind Singh taught the Vidya in a way that is, that he can engage large numbers. And you see me do it all the time. That we can we can turn non-telegraphically, move non-telegraphically. We can pounce from 15 feet and get in before the enemy can blink, I'm in from 15 feet, etc. and so on. These are the unique things about Shastar Vidya, which other martial artists find very enthralling and so on. And in the next few years, with the app coming out and the books, you'll find Shastar Vidya proliferating globally. We're on that point now. I just have to get everything right, get all the evidence and so on. When I first came to England and I showed low mushti with fighting with a kada, many Sikhs were deeply upset to the point I got about 3-4 death threats from it. But then when we produced evidence like Devinder, Tour that he met, he came across a beautiful quote from France, which says, it's called, the soldiers of Maharajah Singh do not duel, but they settle their disputes with a very unchristian form of boxing. Okay, that's Devinder found that quote from a French church called quote from Allard. And then later on, me and Jagdeep, what's called Nihang Singh, we went to Guru Hasrai because we corrected all this law. And we found an example of Krishna beating Rukma with a kada in his hand. You can see that image on our website as well. So a lot of evidence I have been gathering for the last 30 odd years because I want to make a solid case. There's no gap, nothing because once the Sikhs realize and everybody else that this is a pakki cheez hai, kachi cheez, this is the actual original Vidya, then the success will be very high for the Vidya. And the Guru Gobind Singh's mission of creating a Shanmukh Khalsa, a Kshatriya Khalsa, that is getting closer with this understanding because Guru Gobind Singh wanted to make a Kshatriya Panth. Kshatriya ke put ho Brahman ko na, he said that all the time. And we're doing that now, slowly but surely.
No, definitely. I've just got to say I've absolutely enjoyed having this conversation, and the answers you've provided have been brilliant. There's just one question that I just wanted to ask, and you touched upon it earlier on in relation to Baba Santa Singh Ji, which is, what are your views then of the entire turmoil and the situation currently with the Nihang factions in India?
So the original Khalsa Panth is a Nihang Kali Nihang Panth. So it's a Pajang Panth. So in the Sikh world now, so people know about Nihangs, they know about Kali Nihangs, but they don't know about Pajangis. So Pajang Panth, Pajangis are the elite of the Nihangs nowadays. So what I represent, what I teach are the Pajangi skills. The Nihangs are the original Panth. All the others that you get nowadays are basically offshoot of Nihangs. When Guru Gobind Singh created the Panth, it was a Nihang Kali Nihang Panth. And in the Kali Nihang Panth it stayed in that form until the point of Riyasta. So throughout the Misl period, Baba Deep Singh, Baba Gravak Singh, they're all Nihangs. Natta Singh, Nod Singh, they're all Nihangs. Every warrior is a Nihang. When the Misls came in Riyasta and kingdoms, they were descendants of Nihangs. Okay, that's why in Maharajah Singh's time, all the ones who held before Maharajah Singh, all the Gurmata was held by Kalis and Nihangs, and they were the elites. And when our books come out, you'll see all that, the evidence for that. The Panth is a Nihang Panth. The Nihang and the Buddha are Gurke Larliya Faujan. Okay, they represent the most beloved of Guru Gobind Singh, Singhs, and so on. What Nihangs are now is the term I introduced many years ago when I first came to England. I'll tell you what Gurdev said. When I learned my Vidya outside the Nihang Dals. I learned it in a secluded place in Morseb and so on. And Gurdev said to me, because I expressed an idea, Babaji, I want to go and be with the Nihangs. Okay, I want to be in the Nihangs with the Kode Kade and the tents and all that stuff and so on. And he basically said, if you want to lose your Sikhi, go and join them now. That's what he said. Like. And what he said was, there are Babbe there, older generation, and some genuine Khalsa, genuine Pyare, like Guru ke Pyare, but their numbers are diminishing and they are not many. Okay? And this has been for a long time, like, and so on. Baba Santa Singh himself personally said to me, he said, if you'd known me when I was young, you would not say Fateh to me. Okay? And there's a lot of stories I'll have on books when I mention this. Baba Santa Singh was mixed with Dakus when he first came in. And he brought in a lot of Dakus. The deterioration on the Nihangs ultimately is, I mean, I love Baba Santa Singh. Gurdev didn't think much of Baba Santa Singh because he knew him when he was young. He was a Daku type. But then Baba Gurdev said, look, I've heard that he's changed. And Baba Santa Singh did do a lot for the Panth. He revived Sablo Grant. He built the Burdal called finances, effing up and so on, a lot of Godware stuff. He stood up to the SGPC. He made it quite clear that Dal Panth, the Burdal, is the original Khalsa Panth. None of the Nihangs nowadays do that. They're subservient or scared of the SGPC. He had fire in his belly. And so he changed from when he was young. And personally, I liked him. And he supported me a lot. And up to Baba Santa Singh's time, in the UK, I was the only recognized Jahdar of the Nihangs Burdal here. As soon as Baba Santa Singh dies, there are numerous factions in India coming up, and then the numerous factions in England started going up as well. Like all these Nihang groups who come here now, ask their history, they come from Baba Santa Singh. But no big deal. The thing is, Nihangs now are a disgrace to what they were. They're Guru ke Ladli Forjan. They should be the representatives of Khalsa. They are the ideal, they're meant to be the ideal Khalsa. Like. Okay? Originally in the Khalsa Panth, you could not just join the Khalsa Panth. When you first came, you will basically, let me tell you how to do it. Say you want spiritual instruction, okay? You will go to various Deres or Santa Babis and so on. And if you're a militant inclined, like Kshatriya, like you're a bit of a Kharku type, you will be the Khalsa will appeal. So you meet a Baba and so on, a Nihang Baba who can teach you the Vidya and so on, and he will take him as a Gurdev. You could not just go off the street and take Amrit in the old days. You would at least spend 2 years with a Gurdev learning all the Maryada, ki pakka ho jao. In your Banya, in your Red, your Maryada, whatever it gives you, like each Gurdev, whatever Gurdev gives you, you get pakka in that. Okay? And then that Baba who takes you to Dalpant, like Buddha to take Amrit, he has to be able to vouch for you that you're a pakka banda, you're not some spy from outside coming in and so on. Then after 2 years of getting pakka in your Maryada, then you take Amrit Shah. Nowadays, you could be a complete asshole, come out of prison for rape or murder, and go and fucking take Amrit Shah next day. Like, there's no checking for anything. So 2 years of preparation, then you take Amrit Shah. Now, if you go back to your pen and start doing seva and staying in doing kitty body, whatever you do, then just a saying like. But if you stay in the Dalpant and do seva, then you're in Nihang like. And then that Nihang, after 12 years, if his seva is notable and he's Sikhi Siddiq is pakka, faith and good. He would then the Fadlataris, or the Guru himself, the Guru's time, they will give him the Khalsa standard and he becomes a Fadlatari. If you look at nowadays, you got Fadlataris in England here. These monkeys, they go there, beg for Fadla, no seva, no knowledge, no nothing. And the Nihang Dals have deteriorated so much, they're selling Fadla. They're selling the standard of the Guru. Okay? So in my books, I do not pull punches. That's the one reason some Nihangs in India, the old guys are happy with me. They don't care. But the younger ones, they get pissed off. You have Nihangs. Let me tell you how bad it is. I met 2 young Nihangs who teach in Gatka. They know me, so they respect me. They know I was with Baba Santa. One Nihang goes, we used to be with Baba Santa Singh, blah, blah, blah. I said, yes. And they do Vidya, yeah. But if you look at the Kamar Kasa means, a Kamarband means it's on your waist. They are so fat that the Kamar Kasa is hanging over the belly button and they're wearing basically a bra like. So when you have deteriorated so much, your physique, your mental, your learning has deteriorated. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes to see what those Nihangs are. If you knew what the old Nihangs like Gurdev was and some of the Babas like Baba Bishan Singh was, and there's some beautiful Nihangs that were there, Baba Bishan Singh and so on, Baba Gurdev, other Nihangs and so on, Baba Ram Singh and so on. Absolutely gorgeous Nihangs. Old Babbe, fierce Babbes, and if they're not fierce militaristically, like Baba Bishan Singh, discipline, super knowledge in terms of part, you can just sit in their presence and they don't need to utter a single word and you're in a spiritual heaven. Like that quality is gone now. It's deteriorating. I'm not saying it's completely gone. There's no such Nihang because such never fades away. But the Nihangs at the moment are disgracing themselves. They're fighting over petrol pumps. They're fighting over fucking money and stupid things, wealth. They're shooting and just killing each other. They are drugged up. They have no discipline or whatever and so on. and they have political they align with this political party, that political party. It's a complete mess. And like I said, much as it pains me, they are no longer Guru Ki Ladli Fauj in general. There are still Guru Ki Ladli Fauj, but they are rare. One Nihang, recently I spoke to in Punjab, to an old Nihang in Delhi, and he reckons even in Hola Malla, of all the people who are dressed as Nihangs, only about 15% are genuine Nihangs. Others are just various forms of Sikhs who may not even believe in Nihang Maryada, who are just dressed as Nihangs. So it's become pretty common now for Sikhs to just dress as Nihangs and so on. It's a dress up, and there are no real Nihangs are getting rarer now. It's difficult, and it may be in the future they may even, I won't say go extinct, but it's harsh. We need there's no real worthy leaders at the moment, in the Nihang Dals. I can't see any.
No, fair enough. I've gone through everything that I wanted to ask you, and again, I can't say thank you enough. It's good to see you after so long, and it's brilliant to have such a great conversation. I just wanted to check: is there anything in particular you wanted to include or just add before we wrap up?
I would say this: we Sikhs, as he sings and so on, we have to. It's called Guru's hukum for us is sat. We must accept the Guru's hukum. So Shabd Vyas and Shastar Vyas is essential, and I would say to you, when Guru Gobind Singh said, Shastar Vidya jim hoye sambhalo, any way you can preserve Shastar Vidya, okay? And like I said, when you talk about Shastar Vidya, it's a whole regime of exercise. You'll get your mind, body fit and so on. You'll link with your history, your traditions, your philosophy, everything together. So Sikhs, like I said, I'm doing my best as I can, but I'm fortunate. I have a wonderful son who's now grown up, just and I have many students and they're wonderful children as well, and we have future generations who are now studying and learning, and many new friends and all around the world doing the Vidya. But I will appeal to the Panth itself, let's preserve our tradition. Let's not let them die and fade away, And even if you don't agree with me 100% on everything, the Vidya is the Vidya at the end of the day, Okay, we go to school, we may come across teachers who might be smoking, doing this and that, but we still study with them, maths, English, whatever, so on. I have the Vidya. If you don't want to learn from me, my students have the Vidya. If you don't want to learn from the students, the app is coming out, the books, you can sit in your private room and do the Vidya. But let's Sikhs preserve our Katha, our Kirtan, our history, our Gurmat, every way we can, That's all I would say to them. That's my appeal to them, let's preserve, otherwise we're going to lose it all, and then when it's gone, then it's too late. So, Shastar Vidya jim hoye sambhalo, help me any way you can to preserve the Vidya. And I will teach anybody, even the people who, you can hate me much as you want, but the Vidya is Guru's Vidya. It's not my Vidya, it's the Guru's Vidya. Okay, if you feel that I'm not a good Sikh or so I want to come and take the Vidya from me. So you good Sikhs can actually preserve it. I would say that. Preserve Shastar Vidya, preserve Gurmat, okay, and remain pakke in your Sikhi as well. Sikhi ke sa swasa na, remember that. Vai Khalsa, Vai Fateh.